I'm late. I'm late. It's because of the kid. It's because of the kid. It's because of the kid you're going to see. Right. Close the door. Keep the line. Oh. That's it. Okay, keep it here. Reel it. Just reel. Okay, bring it over the dock. There you go. That's. Right. Now you can unhook it and throw it back in. That's a blue runner, and we're going to say it again. Oh yeah, we don't need that. Oh, the hook's out. All right.
Can we at least
grab it and throw it back in the water? Let's go.
Can we at least do the?
I don't know what the is, but don't grab it like that.
I was grabbing it.
Underneath. Okay, hold it. Damn, okay. Kids. And just take a picture. 3, 2, 1. Chuck it back in the water. Let's go. Gently. Okay, that wasn't gently. That's good enough. So everybody. Okay, fish. High five. Keep the line on. There you go. Before we proceed further with this live stream, let me make sure that we're live everywhere. Rumble, we should be live. I'm gonna check here. Okay, I see myself on Rumble. That's a good sign. Locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. John B. 80s Music says, you can't gently from 20 feet up, right? Just yeet. Yeah, those fish are fine when they land back in the water. All right. I asked the chat, do we start with a gag or do we start with a smile? There are only 2 people who replied, so we're going to start with a smile before we get into the gaggery. Okay, I mean, first of all, what a week we had last week. I couldn't get a stream out Friday because I did a podcast with Sean Newman, a fellow Canadian. Sean Newman Podcast, SNP is the logo. That's going to drop, I believe the word is tomorrow. And I know everyone here watching knows, a bit about my testicular torsion. The Patreon portion of his podcast goes into great detail that some of you may or may not know. So Sean Newman Podcast. Let me just make sure that I'm getting everything right there. Hold on one second. Then we're going to get into the gaggery, unfortunately, before heck is my problem, man. It's SHAWN. Podcast? What is my problem? Yeah, Sean Newman. Okay, good. SHAUNNEWMAN. Sean Newman Podcast. Check it out. It's going to be great. All right. Before Barnes gets into the house, before we get into the super chats that are coming in, you know what? Better do the disclaimers before everything else. Disclaimers, sponsor, and then we're going to rant. Just a little bit. Disclaimers. Holy crap, we're going to talk about that Michigan, I don't know if it's fortification or fornication or something else now. We're going to talk about that later tonight. But just in general, despite the fact that I am trained as a lawyer, though no longer practicing, there will be no legal advice. Do not be a fool and take legal advice from a lawyer on the interwebs. There will be no medical advice. I think I know a lot about, my own hypochondriasis and things like that. I do not give medical advice. There will be no election fornication advice, but my goodness, does the more the information just trickles out, 3 years later, little police reports containing a lot of damning information. So all of that. These things that you see coming in the highlighted colors, these are called super chats on YouTube, Rumble rants on Rumble. YouTube takes 30% of those. And so if some of you don't want to support the beast that censors, that deplatforms, that manipulates, go over to Rumble, where Rumble ordinarily takes 20% of their Rumble rants, but for the rest of this year, they're taking 0%. So all of it goes to the creator. Hopefully it's going to, pay dividends, literally and figuratively speaking. And next year, when they go back to taking their 20%, they will have gathered a larger crowd. Dostalov Aktmankari, how is it going? Had the founders foreseen the future, they would have written a very different Second Amendment, a well-protected public. Artur Pawlowski, who was on Thursday, my goodness, was that a marathon of a podcast live stream interview? That was amazing. You cannot buy happiness. You cannot buy freedom. The Canadian government is never going to silence this hero. If you didn't see it, 3 hours we went, all in all. Artur Pawlowski is amazing. And we got Dostalov Aktmankari, being necessary to the security of a free state, the duty of the people to keep and bear arms shall be enforced. Keep fighting. All right. Before Barnes gets here. Oh, the sponsor. We got to do the sponsor, of course. You may have noticed when you come into the stream, it says this video contains a paid sponsor, because it does. Winston Shittenhouse is in the house. Well, we're not doing Shittenhouse. We're doing Brick House Nutrition. Field of Greens. If I'm speaking with a lisp, it's only because I accidentally bit my tongue savagely. Like I don't know what my problem is. I bit my tongue while eating dinner, and I really cut it deep, and then it gets swollen, and then you just sit there like chewing on it. Ugh. So if you hear me lisping more than normal, that's why. Let me just gather my tongue again. Brickhouse, Field of Greens, desiccated powdered greens. It's sort of the rage now, powdered greens, and not all powdered greens are created equal. And I like Field of Greens. I use Field of Greens. I spent 30 minutes on the phone with the doctor behind the company. I think his name was Dr. Mike. I forget his name now. It was a little while ago when we first contracted for sponsorships, and I wanted to make sure I was comfortable with the company, their product, how they make it, where they make it, what they say, and how they say it. I don't care about how they say it, but so I spent some time on the phone with the company's doctor. Field of Greens, powdered greens. It's not an extract. It's not a supplement. It's like basically dried, pulverized greens. Most people don't know you're supposed to have 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Everyone, behold, I'm anticipating a little drink later on, so I sliced my cucumbers here. Most people you're all supposed to have 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Raw, the best. Most people don't have that many servings of fruits and vegetables. Most people don't eat anywhere near enough fruits and vegetables. You have bad habits. You suck down that disgusting, toxic Red Bull crap. You go to McDonald's where they don't even have vegetables, and the vegetables that they put on their burgers are hardly qualified. If you can't get your 5 to 7 servings of fruits and veggies with all the antioxidants and nutrients and all that stuff, Field of Greens, desiccated greens, not defecated, pulverized. It is a food, not an extract, not a supplement. Hence, it's USDA organic, made in America. 1 spoonful is a serving of fruits and vegetables with all of the antioxidants and all that good stuff. You do it twice a day, you're already halfway to being better than most people in their dietary habits, which most people's dietary habits are not good. So fieldofgreens.com. It'll bring you to Brickhouse Nutrition. Promo code Viva. You'll get 15% off your first order. Get in the habit of having healthy habits. That's the best habit to have. Okay. Now, speaking of healthy habits, let's get into the gaggery, shall we? I said we were going to start either with gagging or with a smile. Now, let me just see. Let me just see what it is. Let me just see which one we're going to go to here. Do we want to go to Katie Telford right away? Do we go to this one? Do we go to this one? Do we start off with... Now, let's start off with... the talking point is in, people. Let me see if it's this one. The talking point in Canada is in. Oh, by the way, no. Before we get there, this joke, I love it now. That's the fish that I caught yesterday that we cooked at home, a blue runner. It looks like a whale when I put it next to that Fortnite figurine. Okay, that was just a little lighthearted laugh before we get to the stuff that's going to make you want to puke. All right, here we go. Out of Canada, people.
I'm the winner this week.
This is let's watch this video. This is what I was going to start with. It wouldn't make you gag, maybe by extension.
All right, ratio of the week time. The winner this week is Justin Trudeau's chief of staff, Katie Telford. Last week, Telford shared an article by The Guardian, which had to be community noted and fact-checked on Twitter because it's just not true. The out-of-context headline, Canada has 0 pro-choice conservative MPs, Watchdog says. The fact check under Katie Telford's tweet says this: Bill C-311 is a 78-word bill that does not contain the word abortion. The bill is to protect a pregnant woman with aggravating circumstances.
We can skip the rest of this. The bottom line is Katie Telford said, Canada has 0 pro-choice conservative MPs. Let's get to the part of this. Where I discovered, like the rest of the world, that there are conservatives in Canada who believe in sex-based abortions.
House of Commons voted against a bill that would protect pregnant women. And the reality is that headline couldn't be further from the truth, because a majority of conservatives voted to allow sex-selective abortions in this country. How very conservative.
So set aside whether or not we're going to fight over whether or not those Canadian conservatives are conservatives. Katie Telford, for those of you who don't know, tied to the Liberal Justin Trudeau regime. Liar. Liar. Like, it's not like, oh, I didn't know that there were no pro-choice conservatives out there. I didn't know that the conservatives also voted unanimously to support the conversion ban bill in Canada. I didn't know that. Liars. Shameless lies. Well, they've got their new talking point, by the way, and it's mind-blowing in its diabolical pathology. Katie Telford. Poilievre's Conservative Party embracing language of mainstream conspiracy theories. First of all, coming from CTV News. Now, it's a Canadian press, so it's like it's a syndicated article. So you're going to see the exact same article being run by CTV News, CBC. Oh, what's Katie Telford's position again? Let me just see here. Tweets are personal views. Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Les opinions exprimées ici sont personnelles. Les opinions exprimées ici sont des mensonges tabarouettes. They're lies, your opinions, Katie. They're not opinions, they're lies. Okay. Chef du cabinet du Premier ministre Trudeau. Oh, tabarnouche que c'est bon. Liar. May I ask just one question, Katie Telford? What is a mainstream conspiracy theory? It sounds like a mainstream conspiracy theory is actually just truth. But let's go to the article, because what does the article say? Liars, liars, and liars. Look at it. Poilievre's Conservative Party embracing language of mainstream conspiracy theories. Conservative leader Poilievre has been hitting the summer barbecue circuit, ramped up with rhetoric around debunked claims that the World Economic Forum is attempting to impose its agenda on sovereign governments. It is, some experts suggest, another sign that some conspiracy theories are moving from the fringes of the internet to the mainstream thinking as people's distrust of government grows. I'll give everybody the article, but let me just do one thing here. Does everybody forget? Like people are wrongly believing that the WEF, Klaus Schwab, penetrates the cabinet. Does everybody remember that clip? Oh no, it's a mainstream conspiracy theory that the WEF is trying to exercise its control or influence policy of sovereign nations. It's a conspiracy theory. You pathological liar, Katie Telford.
Now names like Mrs. Merkel.
There's audio problems here. That's
even
not me.
Vladimir Putin and so on. They all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
Yes.
But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who did you say?
Prime Minister Trudeau.
One more time.
Prime Minister Trudeau.
Yes.
President.
Please to be telling us, Klaus Schwab, what have you done to Prime Minister Trudeau? I believe it involves the penetration.
And of Argentina and so on, so that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was on a research. So that we penetrate the cabinet. So that we penetrate the cabinets.
By the way, one thing you don't want to hear is a German saying, "I will penetrate your cabinet."
So yesterday I was on a at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
They are for our global leaders, yeah. Und Klaus Schwab has penetrated the cabinet. But Katie Telford, with her state-sponsored media, tells us it's a mainstream conspiracy theory. And it's not one. You get them all doing it now. It's the narrative of the day that Pierre Poilievre is espousing mainstream conspiracy theories that the WEF is using its influence to enforce, effect, implement policy on sovereign nations. Oh, and we also forgot when we are talking about how they have penetrated the cabinet. I know all of you watching have seen this. Reject all the cookies. Do you know who Chrystia Freeland is? She's the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance of Canada. And she is the author of the, I don't know, whatever. The Honorable Chrystia Freeland is Canada's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Oh, Ms. Freeland was first elected. Who gets this? Okay. Oh, but let us go down to the end, yeah. She was also awarded the Eric M. Warburg Award by the Atlantic Brücke for her achievements in strengthening transatlantic ties. What does that sound like? In 2020, she was awarded the Freedom House's Mark Palmer Prize in recognition of her years of work in championing democracy and human rights. Bullshit. And she is a member of the Forum's Board of Trustees. Woof. It's a conspiracy theory. If you think that it's true, You're a crazy conspiracy theorist, a mainstream conspiracy theorist at this point. Oh, but I forgot to do we do the exercise that we just Google Justin Trudeau, WEF. You'll see a beautiful landing page. Google Jagmeet Singh, WEF. You'll see a beautiful landing page on the WEF. Yeah, but it's a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy theory that the WEF is trying to influence or have an impact on policy of foreign nations. Okay. But speaking of the liars, the Canadian pathological tyrants, so-called liberals. Oh my goodness. Can you believe they still call themselves liberals? Just a couple more lies that they're promoting right now. They're demonizing Roman Baber. He's apparently, I guess he got picked up by the Conservative Party. Good pickup, Conservatives. He might be the only person I'd ever vote for, despite the fact that he now identifies as conservative. They are railing against Roman Baber. Talib Nur Muhammad writes about Roman Baber. Wait for the punchline for this. Too extreme for Ford Nation, Baber is just right for the pro-convoy, anti-science, misogynist, rage-farming coalition Poilievre is trying to build. That sounds a little bit like rage farming right there, Talib. I look forward to seeing my friend Hookham. That's one person who I went to dunk on, and then I forgot. Oh yeah, the piece of political rubbish has already blocked me. I don't blame him for it, but he has. Then you got another person, Emmett McFarlane. And he's got a Ukrainian flag in his bio before the Canadian flag, so you know what you're about to see is going to be intellectual diarrhea. Your federal conservatives under Poilievre, so radically far right, they are taking on anti-vax, anti-public health candidates that were so mercilessly ignorant and immoral that Doug Ford booted them from his caucus, making fun of Roman Baber yet again. Roman Baber, for those of you who don't know, I've had him on the channel, is a Jewish immigrant from Soviet Russia. These liberal idiots are calling a Jewish refugee from Soviet Russia far-right conspiracy theorists, anti-vaxxer, whatever. These people are the worst people on earth. And by these people, yes, I mean liberals. And I mean liberal politicians, not liberal citizens. Although, at some point, if you continue to vote for this rubbish, I don't know what that says about you. All right. That's the Canadian angle for today. Enjoy. Fieldofgreens.com, promo code Viva. Barnes is in the house, looking dapper again. Okay, hold on. I didn't forget anything. I don't think I forgot anything. All right, let's bring him on. Bring on the Barnes. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Sir, how goes the battle?
Good.
Robert, dare I ask what's over your shoulder? Although I suspect it's what you were reading Friday night on Bourbon with Barnes.
Or our book club with Barnes. The book of the month for Viva Barnes Law.locals.com is Common Sense by Thomas Paine. Going to be reading one chapter each week. We do those Friday at 9 Eastern or 9-ish Eastern. And what happened during the American Revolution, the Common Sense was read in taverns and cafes all across the country. It is still, by a per capita basis, the best-selling book in the history of the United States, other than the Bible. To give some idea, 1 out of every 5 American households had it in their home. More than half of all Americans had read it or heard it. You just don't find any book other than the Bible that has that degree of influence ever. And that's, people want to know what the Constitution means and what did the founding generation believe, which goes beyond just, the people who signed the Declaration of Independence. Goes to all the people who made the Declaration of Independence reading the words it was written in. There is no better book than the Common Sense.
I was listening to it, and it was actually quite soothing. But what was one of the first things he said? Time makes more converts than reason. I mean, I love that, because it's sort of like just a better way of saying with age comes wisdom. Well, like you say, you wait long enough and you go through enough shit, and you'll eventually realize what you could not have been convinced was the case even when you were younger. Okay, Robert, I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I guess I'm not. What do we have on the menu for tonight? Because it's going to be a big one.
Oh, just that you might have remember Wednesday, sidebar Heather McDonald from the Manhattan Institute, covers a lot of issues involving some of the cases we'll be talking about tonight: diversity, equity, inclusion issues, racial politics, policing, a lot of those matters she's written a bunch of books on, and so she's going to be our only sidebar guest probably of August. Then we'll start locking people up come September. But yeah, otherwise topics tonight. First one up, a couple of bonus topics off the top. Ohio won, went to a vote, the attempt to amend the Constitution, and Sam Bankman-Fried had his bail revoked. Then the top 12 topics starts out with Brooke Jackson updating her case, the FBI shooting in Utah, the Gateway Pundit Michigan fraud case from the 2020 election, updates on Trump. That was the most popular one on the message board. The gag order entered by the judge in the DC case, the grand jury abuse referenced in the Florida case, and the Twitter subpoena issue that appeared before the DC Court of Appeals. We got guns. We got a SCOTUS decision and an Illinois decision. We have Biden corruption. What's going on? All this special counsel stuff in the latest Hunter Biden update. We have the diversity, equity, inclusion lawsuit, class action securities case brought against Kellogg. We have another securities class action case about to be brought against Target for its trans promotions and its own version of ESG and diversity, equity, inclusion policies. We have the Andy No verdict out of Portland, Oregon. Missouri versus Biden. The oral argument was this week. It was about 2 hours long. We got an Obamacare case up before the Fifth Circuit that might have ramifications beyond Obamacare. The Washington doctors brought a lawsuit in state court in Washington because the Washington Medical Commission is trying to de-license them for doing what? Prescribing ivermectin, which the FDA actually finally admitted this week was all okay all along. And a bonus topic that we'll probably cover in the after party at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. What's going on with Dr. Tenpenny in Ohio? That was the one of the most popular questions asked for on the board.
Okay, excellent. So, look, we'll start with the Ohio one. Some people are very confused about what it meant, what the implications are. They were voting on a measure that would have raised the threshold to change the Constitution later on.
Yeah, exactly. So it was an amendment to the Constitution, which could itself pass by just majority vote, that would prohibit future amendments to the Constitution from even being proposed unless they met a much higher signature threshold, and then couldn't be passed unless it reached a 60% voting threshold. And it was basically put on there by pro-lifers who think they're going to lose on a coming abortion referendum in Ohio unless they made it more difficult for it to make the ballot and made it more difficult and required supermajority approval. Effectively, what that would do is shift power from the people to the state legislature and the governor's chair. And I was not. J.D. Vance, a lot of conservatives were for it. I was not. I don't think shifting power to the legislature is a good idea in general. I prefer power be in the hands of the people as often and as much and as frequently as possible. And Ohioans agreed with me. It was about a 22-point drop-off from the Trump margin. It not only failed, it didn't even get close to passing.
Yeah, I think it was like 57-43, give or take.
Yeah, exactly. So about a 22-point. And if you looked at working class areas, the drop-off was even bigger, for at least from the Trump vote margins, 25 points, sometimes 30-point drop-offs. It wasn't primarily driven by Democrats rejecting it in that sense. It was driven by independent and working class Republican voters they read it and they're like, why do I want to take away my own power and give it to politicians instead? It was a short-term solution by people who think they have a current edge with the legislature over the voters. And I thought, if you're pro-life, go out and persuade people of your position. Don't rely on procedural tricks to try to deny people their ability to vote on it because you don't think you can persuade people.
And I guess the idea is if they pass a bad abortion law or one that people don't like, you can just, I don't know, abolish it or pass another one with the same majority. But this was like amending the shareholder agreement so that it, for all future decisions, makes it harder for good and for bad.
And anyone who's ever been through those shareholder agreements, You impose any supermajority rule, you're inviting problems. That's just the short answer. I mean, what it effectively did is shift power from the people directly to the legislature, because this didn't restrict at all. This didn't require the legislature to have a 60% vote to pass legislation. It was only the voters have to have a 60% vote. And so all it did was, hey, let's give more power to the legislature because we, the pro-life community, have an edge there that we don't think we have an edge with the majority of voters. It was an anti-democratic path and an anti-populist path, quite frankly. And so I was never in favor of it. It was short-sighted in its perspective that long-term they would have probably regretted.
Got the majority for now, or the edge for now on a specific issue, and then they might not have it on another issue, and then get stuck with the legislation that I can think of a number that would be problematic. Okay, so interesting, and that it's dead in the water. Do they try to revamp it? Like, do they do what we did in Quebec? Just keep having referendums until they succeed?
No, I mean, I don't think so. It lost so badly. I think they'll give up on that at this point and realize they need to shift into how can we win on the abortion issue itself. The reality is most voters favor reasonable limits on abortion. They don't favor complete bans, but they do favor reasonable limits.
Mhm.
Focus there. There's a part of the pro-life community that doesn't. I mean, I understand. I mean, they think life, a human soul, a human person within the meaning of the Constitution begins at the moment of conception. And so for them, there's no negotiation whatsoever. It's just a position that 75% of Americans reject. So, that they have a political problem. They have not been able to persuade people of that belief. It's just not sufficiently universal for it to succeed. So what they can focus on is where there is majority support, which is pretty much any abortion after the first trimester is unpopular. And you can ban most of those. You can ban all of them, frankly. And you can ban some that happen beforehand if it's being done for discriminatory reason. If you have people seeking abortions because of for eugenist, Richard Hanania loving kind of reasons, eugenicist reasons. For people who don't know, Richard Hanania is a eugenicist, just in case you don't know. We interviewed him in the past when he was not admitting he was a eugenicist and suggested he was something else.
What is a eugenicist?
Someone who believes in eugenics, who believes in getting rid of certain populations. Bill Gates is a eugenicist. He partially disguises it, but just watch the 60 Minutes interview with him and Melinda Gates, where they're walking through an African village, and the CBS guy, 60 Minutes guy, says, "Can you imagine these people having too many kids, having more kids?" Why was he concerned about that in an African village?
Okay, interesting. Okay, so that is Ohio 1 done. Second story before we head over to Rumble, people. I'm going to give the link here one more time, although it's the pinned link in the chat in YouTube. Last story for YouTube, SBF. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if they try to show that they can be rough on, I don't know, certain people. SBF is heading back to jail, bail revoked because allegedly witness tampering. As far as I understand, the allegations of witness tampering are that he leaked a portion or some of his ex-girlfriend's diary to the press. I don't know exactly what the portions of the diary said, why that would translate into witness tampering or intimidation, but he's back in jail pending trial. Robert, what do you think of that?
This is a common pattern, and it'll be one of the things we discuss in the Trump case, that for too long, the Supreme Court has allowed judges to abuse their bail power. Your power for bail should be, excessive bail should mean any condition that doesn't relate to your appearance for purposes of trial or punishment. That's what bail is there for. And the Congress changed it in 1984. And the Supreme Court approved it in a bogus case called Salerno, 5-4, a very narrow decision, which said you could take other factors into consideration and it wasn't quote unquote excessive bail. What does witness issues have to do with bail? It should have nothing to do with bail or unrelated to bail. So in my view, the revocation of his bail terms was patently unconstitutional. Secondly, this isn't witness intimidation. This effort to say only the prosecution side of events gets to be presented, and only what happens in court. You're only allowed to talk about it in court. You're not allowed to talk about it in the public. It directly contradicts not only the bail provisions, but directly contradicts the First Amendment and your right to public participation in public trials. And what it's intended to do is prevent you from defending yourself. Right. So here's Sam Bankman-Fried. Nothing he did was intimidation. Right. I mean, the impeaching a witness, embarrassing a witness, exposing a witness, criticizing a witness. That's not intimidation. Intimidation is something illegal, something unlawful, bribing them. I'm going to come by and shoot you or kneecap you or take away your business in some illegal manner. That's obstruction. That's intimidation. Asserting your legal rights and remedies is not of a witness intimidation. So it's a preposterous ruling. But because nobody likes Sam Bankman-Fried, nobody cares. And this is where conservatives have been asleep at the wheel for forever. That, you know, they care now that it's happening to Trump, but they didn't care when it was happening to Epstein or Maxwell when they were wrongfully denied bail. And they don't care when it's happening to Sam Bankman-Fried because, oh, we don't like him, so let's throw out the Constitution there. It was mostly conservative judges and justices that created these evisceration of the Constitution, these so-called originalists, these so-called read it in the plain text. I don't know how many times the conservatives, well, I just want a judge who interprets and enforces the law. There's not a conservative judge in America who does that. So there's some that are better at it than others, but there's not a single one that sticks to it. And this is an embarrassing ruling that is a disgrace. And they always use unpopular defendants to establish terrible and horrendous precedents. And it's the same corrupt hack of a judge that's presiding over some of the Trump cases that has a long history of being a corrupt hack of a judge and a partisan hack who the Second Circuit refuses to discipline and the Supreme Court refuses to remedy.
Because I'm reading from an NPR article, but it's not maybe the best for the details, but it says the alleged leak of Ellison's diary. This is the leak of the diary, which included reflections on her relationship with Bankman-Fried and some of her professional misgivings, was the last straw for prosecutors. It goes down to say they also fault Bankman-Fried for having participated in more than 1,000 phone calls with journalists, more than 500 with the author Michael Lewis, who is writing a book about Bankman-Fried. So it sounds, I mean, I don't understand, and I feel like I'm missing something. It sounds like he's doing nothing more than talking in his own defense in the court of public opinion. And maybe, even if it's embarrassing to release the details of a diary, that's all that he's doing. Historically, I mean, I'm just a Canadian bumpkin. Witness intimidation was an unlawful, illicit manner of coercing or preventing certain testimony come trial. Nothing more, nothing less.
Completely. It has to be something that is unlawful, that is criminal. You can't say, oh, you're doing something that makes a witness look bad. We're going to call that intimidation. That isn't what the law provides for. I mean, it's punishing him because he's defending himself in the court of public opinion. And they know that nobody cares about him politically, so they can get the courts to railroad him. And they're imprisoning him in the Metropolitan Detention Center. I don't know why how does the Southern District of New York always end up with jurisdiction in these cases? This guy didn't live in New York. This guy, I mean, he lived in the Bahamas. I mean, he otherwise lived in California. The case has no business, and they're going to put him in MDC. So let's see if he's still alive by the time of trial. 50-50.
So I know nothing of that. Is that a particularly bad place, Robert?
That's where Epstein killed himself.
The front door. Okay.
It's
oh my goodness.
It's been sued repeatedly because of how dangerous it is.
I don't want to think conspiracy theories, but if Bankman knows too much, and now that they know that he knows too much, and send him to where Epstein was, and the guards will fall asleep, the cameras will malfunction, and Bankman pulls an Epstein. Okay, Robert, before we go over to Rumble exclusively, because I would be morally remiss not to read these as quickly as possible. Now there's a few in there. Some Rumble rants, people. Il Sarto says, I don't know if Patrick Lancaster does interviews, but I think you would be the perfect person to interview him, and it would literally break the internet. Please try Patrick Lancaster.
That's the Ukrainian reporter, but he's we've reached out to him before. He doesn't do many interviews.
Oh, I'm going infinite here. Okay, whatever. Then we got Mandatory Carry says, and $5 to the cover. We love you, Susan's left tribe. That's not a word. Touch the Rot says, as I promised after the Artur Pavlovsky live stream, I wanted to donate to his cause, but streetchurch.ca uses Stripe as the payment processor, which is very woke. So I'd do this instead. Touch the Rot. So I'm donating to the pastor via a larger than usual rant. Don't worry, I'm gonna give something to pastor as well. Please include this to whatever you donate to him, or just keep it in your standing donation fund. No refund wanted. Thanks. Arkansas Crime Attorney says, I have this is a Little Rock from YouTube. I now have my practice pending license in Tennessee. Robert, I am ready to work in Chattanooga. My in-laws live in Morristown, and I am 40 miles from Gatlinburg. Arkansas Crime Attorney. Oh, and by the way, Viva, Rumble has been dropping. I think there is interference in the stock price. State of the Leland. How long until the untimely end of SBF? Barnes, do you wager on such a macabre things where touch the rot? Heather McDonald is excellent. Setting a reminder now. Also, Oprah fan, and especially the living legend, greatest tenor Placido Domingo, and who wrote a book about his abuse by Me Too extortion cartel. Okay, sorry about the infinite cascading. Okay, good. So now what we're going to do, Robert, I'm bring your face back in here. We're going to end on YouTube. Come on over to Rumble or go to Locals directly, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Removing from YouTube in 3, 2, 1,691 people. Move on over to Rumble. Booyah. Okay, Robert. I tell you, no matter how cynically you get, it's hard to keep up. Are they going to, Epstein?
Well, I mean,
Bankman.
I think it was Zero Hedge said exactly that. He said, we wonder if the cameras will stop working outside of SBF's cell. I mean, he's scheduled for a trial in October, which is already crazy, an early date. And they generally like to lock people up to make it more difficult for them to be effective in the court of public opinion, for them, make it more difficult for them to prepare their own defense, to psychologically break them, because it's like quasi-torture the way a lot of these places are designed. It's punishment without conviction on a basis of a trial. So that's where the aspects are, is why they do it, is why the prosecutors abuse this power all the time, and they're never disciplined for it, ever.
Well, I would not place bets on such a macabre thing anyhow, but I know what I'm thinking. All right, Robert, speaking of macabre to macabre, I guess it's a bit of a silver lining. The Brooke Jackson lawsuit that you are acting in, Brooke Jackson's key tam, arguing fraud on behalf of the state, it was dismissed without prejudice, or it was dismissed and you had permission to amend, which you've done and refiled, as far as I understood. Could you explain I guess you explained already thoroughly why it was dismissed in the first place, but maybe refresh everybody's memory and specify what you needed to add by way of amendment, hopefully to avoid a future dismissal of the lawsuit again.
So he originally dismissed with prejudice all the fraud claims, and only said that we might be able to, he dismissed without prejudice the retaliation claims. So we sought a motion to amend the judgment to allow us to amend on the fraud claims as well, and for him to clarify what it is we could amend on because he didn't explicitly say we could amend on the retaliation claims. It was implicitly there by being without prejudice, but not explicitly there. And so we sought a motion to amend the judgment. The clerk, kind of odd peculiarity, kicked it off the docket. We had to refile it. We had to file an appeal to preserve appeal rights because of timing issues. Then the appeals court clerk kicked it off the docket, which was very weird. So we were getting all these weird docket things that we were having to get the district court to correct and get the Court of Appeals to correct. Finally got it all corrected, and the Court of Appeals stayed the appeal, saying, let's let the district court make a ruling on this motion to alter or amend the judgment. The district court came in and granted our request to motion to alter and amend the judgment, and said several things. He said, definitely you can refile for an amended complaint on the retaliation claim to clarify what they knew and when they knew it. But he went much further than that. He said you could also amend on the fraud claims, including, even though he originally had dismissed those with prejudice. So it's the district court in part reversing himself, saying actually he should have dismissed without prejudice and given an opportunity to amend. So credit to the court, recognition that now that he looked at it again, I want to see a second shot at this. And is allowing an amendment on the fraud by inducement claim, allowing an amendment on the materiality issue, and on those two components are critical, because the fraud and the inducement is that the whole scheme was a scheme by Pfizer to say they were going to deliver here's what the contract required. The Defense Department contract required, for those that don't remember, because there's a lot of stuff out there circulating that this is a military designed bioweapon and all that jazz. That's just not true. Just false. And I get a lot of people, including Bobby Kennedy and others at times, have heard that and entertained that. Bobby Kennedy told me directly that he understands it's not accurate. But because we actually got the contract in the suit. We didn't have the contract when we initially filed suit. And so part of what we wanted to include in the amended suit is that contractual language, which the contract said you will deliver. The deliverable is a safe, effective vaccine for the prevention of COVID-19.
Stop. For the prevention, not for the reduction of severity of symptoms.
Correct.
And
in fact, it distinguished the two. It said we're not asking for a therapeutic that would reduce the impact or effect of a disease. We're asking for a vaccination that will prevent transmission and infection of COVID-19. And it said that repeatedly. It said, here's what you're going to deliver. Here's what you're going to deliver. Here's what you're going to deliver. Here's what we are paying for. And our argument is they knew at the time they entered into the contract that they could not deliver a safe, effective vaccine for the prevention of COVID-19. They knew it throughout their testing and data. And so because part of the requirement to make sure they were meeting that standard was to constantly independently update the Defense Department separate from the FDA about what was happening in all the clinical trials. This is what Brooke Jackson witnessed. She saw, this can't be safe. This can't be effective. This can't prevent COVID vaccine, a COVID infection or transmission, because all of the safety protocols are being ignored. All the scientific metrics are being eviscerated. That you can't trust any of the data coming out of this because they're doctoring it, they're falsifying it, they're defrauding everybody in the process. That you have something that's worse than a clinical trial. It's so unreliable and so untrustworthy. And that's what she witnessed. That's what she disclosed. And when she disclosed it and tried to go up through the internal food chain as to what was going on, she was summarily fired the moment they found out. She had talked to the FDA, which has still not been explained how they found out she talked to the FDA. So we brought a claim without knowing what that contract said. The court relied in part on on Pfizer's interpretation of that contract to dismiss. We said, look, if you look at this more robustly, there's actually different issues here. The other big thing, to the court's credit, it said, is we had highlighted, I said at the time, oral argument was very extensive, very broad, that the court seemed inclined to give us a fair shot. When the written opinion came out, I said it felt like it was written more by a clerk. It didn't feel like it was written by the same court. It's like somewhere along the way, the court had shifted perceptions of the case, which I attributed that to potentially being a clerk's influence, because so many of the court clerks these days are even if they're working for a Republican appointee, they're very pro-vaccine, and many of them are liberal Democrats, honestly, pretending otherwise in order to get a premier clerkship because of how much money you can cash that in at a big corporate law firm. For those that don't know, young law students, when they're young law graduates, go work clerk for a federal district court, sometimes a year, sometimes 2 years. They parlay that right out of law school. If they get a federal judicial clerkship, it's considered a prime gig for big corporate firms to write big checks to them. Often they write big bonuses to them if they do a clerkship. So you're talking about $200,000. I mean, you're talking about big money that these lawyers can make if they get a judicial clerkship. It's like a guaranteed pathway to professional success in life, in the legal career. So he came back. He said, you know what? Because one of our points was, Judge, there's a big difference between materiality when the government knows the allegation is true, but still gives them money. That's a true immaterial fraud. In other words, that fraud is not actual fraud because it was inconsequential to their decision making. So it's like saying, you know what, this device doesn't work for this other purpose, but it's not that other purpose that the government is paying for the device for. So they don't care that it might have been falsely represented that it had two purposes. If the one purpose it's working for is what it paid for. Mm-hmm. The allegation of the Pfizer was, hey, the Biden administration won't join the case. The Biden administration is saying, please, let's let the case go away. The Biden administration is saying it must be immaterial because they're still writing his checks here at Pfizer. And the argument was that's because the government officially believes Pfizer's lies. If the government has never come out and said, we agree that Brooke Jackson's allegations are true.
And we
agree.
pay anyhow.
Correct.
Okay.
And for obvious reasons, they can't, because then it would negate the safety, efficacy, and preventive nature of the vaccine.
Robert,
that's not even a vaccine. It's a purely ineffective therapeutic. It doesn't even work as a therapeutic.
Let me bring this up to refresh everybody's memory about this gem.
If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee?
Did you test for transmission?
And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunization before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand.
We can stop the verbal
speed
diarrhea.
Of science, speed of greed, speed of fraud. That's the speed they were acting.
Well, she did mention the market after. We had to get with the market. Speed of science, my ass with $2 signs.
There was no science to it, and they knew it. That's what Brooke Jackson exposed. That's what Brooke Jackson discovered and uncovered. And the judge recognized this in his order. He says, you know what? There's a big difference between whether or not just the fact the government was aware of an allegation of fraud doesn't mean the government accepted the allegation was true. And he seemed to be saying, you know what? I think this case is going to move on past dismissal now and into discovery. And he scheduled a scheduling order appearance for everybody to show up at the end of August in Beaumont, Texas. Now, so a case that Pfizer thought was dead, the Biden administration thought was dead, has been resurrected at the district court level. And I'll be honest, I didn't think I liked what the district courts at the hearing. I thought he was I said so at the time, that even if he ruled against me, I thought he was a straight shooter. And I'd been critical of him previously because I thought he was too deferential to Pfizer early on in terms of, giving him stays and things of this nature. But this is great credit to the judge. I mean, very few judges are willing to say, hold on a second, maybe we should look at this again. Most of them become so ego committed to their original opinion, they won't second guess anything. They'll usually take a pot shot at you as a lawyer for even daring to second guess them. This judge, to his credit, just the opposite. I'm sure Pfizer was shocked. They'll bring in their 25 lawyers, however many they're going to have show up for this one. There's usually they just keep coming and coming and coming and coming. I was talking to somebody. Let's just say he's a mutual friend of ours about some, doing some legal work for him down the road. And he was like, how do you handle, Robert, when there's so many other lawyers on the other side? And I was like, that's my entire career. There's always like a dozen or 2 dozen and more. They always bring more and more and more and more and more. Maybe they build a living daylights out of these big drug companies. But when you're a career criminal, when you make all the different cartels in Mexico look like street corner level drug dealers, and that's what Pfizer is, the biggest criminal drug dealer in the history of man, then I understand why you got so many lawyers on the payroll.
I thought you were going to say, how do you deal with all those lawyers on the other side? I picture them all naked. But Robert, Brooke put out a tweet. Let me just make sure I can get it here. Twitter has been off today in terms of showing the images.
You call it X or you call it Z?
I heard
someone say you call it Z.
I'm calling it Twitter, and I don't care. Now, Brooke says all parties required to appear in person, see you there, and you got an order-setting scheduling conference. This is a purely procedural court date, right? Nothing substantive happens on this.
No, it's but what he could decide whether or not he'll allow Discovery to move forward.
Okay. Well, is there?
We'll see. I mean, he's scheduled. I mean, what he's saying is everything's back on the docket. Okay. Everything. Let's take it. And I think here too, the court of public opinion doesn't hurt. I mean, judges are human beings, and they can see everything that's happening around them. And what's happened is a lot of the predictions that those of us that were critical of this drug from day one, more and more of them have come true. And some judges who, and politicians and others that were skeptical initially are like, something has turned out different than we expected here.
Maybe the judge knows someone who suffered an adverse reaction. Maybe the judge themselves. Who knows? All right, good news, Robert. That's good stuff.
Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's great news. That's the white pill of the week, white pill of the month, and it couldn't happen for. And by the way, if you want to go back and look at the timing of when there was a massive, dramatic drop off, particularly with children's uptake of the vaccine, it corresponds to when Brooke Jackson went public in late January, February of 2022, I believe. Was it 2022? Yeah, it was. Because she had been, even though she'd filed her suit in 2020, her lawyers were sitting on it, the government was sitting on it, and she wanted to go public in order to limit the amount of damage because she saw they're going to try to inject all the kids with it. And if you look at, now the data is out, basically, let's put it this way. Something happened in February of 2022 that led a whole bunch of people to stop taking the vaccine. And there was a massive reduction in the number of kids who took it, massive reduction in the general population that took it.
And also,
95% of the population has basically quit. They're not taking boosters. They're not taking the initial shot. The people that didn't get it aren't getting it. And that's where the people underestimate the power of the court of public opinion. And Brooke Jackson went public to great risk to herself, any future she had, any career she had, anything else. And you're going up against again somebody that makes the cartels look like small change. So there's always all kinds of risks that go with that. She did it fearlessly, and the net effect was who knows how many lives have been saved around the world. So this is going to be a case I cite for forever as why you try to make a difference, even if the politicians look like it's going to be tough, even if the judges look like it's going to be tough, even if the other side has all the money and the resources and the power. Brooke Jackson is a classic example of how you can make a great difference just in the court of public opinion that can lead to their main goal here, which was to save lives.
Fantastic. All right, now before we get into the less white pill of the week, Robert, I'll just bring up two of these.
Yeah.
Ohioans got to vote for on the higher threshold. Nebraska got mad that the voters approved marijuana and had the Nebraska Supreme Court throw it out, and then the state changed procedure to make voter initiatives impossible. And then we got Robert. Is that a feral pig from Drew Estates in our hand? Hold on one second. Let me see here.
Oh no, I don't. Oh, maybe it's a special cigar, but I took off the label, so I don't remember now.
Feral pig. I thought it was something else. All right, Robert. The story of the week that had me thinking more Waco, but just at a smaller scale. Maybe Ruby Ridge actually is a better example. I'm a simple man. I've never worked in law enforcement, but I have to think instinctively. If you can't arrest a mobility, what's the word I'm looking for? Mobility impaired 78-year-old man with a SWAT team and everything, you can't do it without killing the individual. You're not doing your job properly, or possibly cynically, you're doing your job exactly as you're supposed to have gone in and do it. This guy, I forget how old he is, 76, give or take, in his 70s. I
think he was 75, Air Force veteran.
Severely,
basically disabled.
Yeah.
Couldn't even walk up, 2 blocks to church, had to drive a car to get there. Was physically not functioning and took care of his older blind son. So, I mean, he was basically homebound most of the time.
And not to make, this is not for nothing, but, overweight, rather like mobility impaired is the point here.
I mean, literally struggled to walk.
And had been posting stuff on Facebook. We're not going to repeat it because whether or not the posts are objectively improper and potentially even illegal, that it escalates with an FBI raid. I don't know. I think was it early morning? I think it was
6 a.m. 6 a.m. The FBI sent a massive SWAT team in, tried to bust down his door, then busted down, broke through his window, and started shooting in mass and executed him on the spot.
How do you make sense of it except to say that this is like, I'm going to go with Jack Posobiec. I think it's Posobiec's interpretation. This is deliberate to send a message to basically to intimidate anybody, get on the outs, do something stupid and give us an excuse and we'll exercise it. What's your take on this?
Well, especially what's concerning here, supposedly they were there just to execute a search warrant.
Well, they executed it, right?
They had apparently visited the day before or two, and he had apparently said negative things to them at the door. Here's the thing. If they had clear evidence that he was a true threat, all that evidence would have been out right away. But is that they would have had it ready to go when they executed the search warrant. And definitely when they killed him, they would have been spinning that story fast. Instead, nothing came out. They had a tight lid, and they still have a tight lid, which means they're trying to make up their story as we speak. That the rogue FBI agents involved in this are trying to script a tale and figure out what evidence would impeach them, what evidence can they hide, what evidence can they manufacture, because it's come out that they had him under investigation for months. Well, if that's the case, then they would know what his neighbors said about him, which was that he was a guy who couldn't move around at all, but was a total teddy bear who just said stupid stuff online. That nobody took his threat seriously at all. That nobody who looked at him would that he was the kind of guy who built ramps for people. He was a woodworking guy. He was an Air Force vet. He wasn't one of these. He was, to be honest with you, he wasn't as hard ass as the Weavers. I mean, he wasn't one of those guys. He wasn't preparing for the apocalypse. He was, he was a keyboard warrior. He was a guy who got on and said stupid stuff online, and that was it. Now, so that increasingly they knew, given his fear and paranoia, that by showing up in mass, that he would probably respond at some level in a hostile manner. They could use as a pretext to summarily execute him. I mean, it looks to me like a summary execution of an individual that's met for two purposes: one, intimidation, and the other, provocation. The intimidation aspect is to get people, you better not say anything bad about Biden, or maybe we'll come knock down your door and shoot you in the head. The other act is what Ruby Ridge and Waco also really were. Also, people forget the Cuban incident that happened, in the 90s too, where they took the kid back at, gunpoint and all that, back to Cuba, etc. But the big ones were Ruby Ridge and Waco. Same sniper, by the way, involved in both of them. So that guy managed to walk without any prosecution. They tried to prosecute him briefly in Idaho and then step back. Only reason why Weaver didn't go down for everything and get railroaded was because Jerry Spence took his case. And Jerry was one of the best at doing political cases, and he got full acquittals. And for those that don't remember, I mean, they shot the mother, Weaver's wife, a mother, while she was holding her 10-month-old daughter.
Like sniper, it was not an accident. And they shot the Weaver's kid when he was confronted
after they summarily executed one of their dogs, and that's what triggered everything to begin with. Man, they were just picking him up, by the way, on a bail warrant, on a not appearing on a minor charge, firearm charge. Yeah, so it was just the same sniper magically appeared at Waco that precipitated everything that happened at Waco. Then they covered it up in mass.
Robert, they're following this guy for an extended period of time. They know what he looks like.
They know he never gets out. They know there can't be any specific plans. They know that all his comments on social media are under his own name. They can see what his neighbors see, that he's just an ordinary schmuck who talks big on the internet. Compare this to Madonna going to D.C. and talking about blowing up the White House. Compare this to Kathy Griffin putting up a bloody dead head of Donald Trump. Compare this to the plays they put on in New York City celebrating the execution of Donald Trump. Compare this to Snoop Dogg shooting Donald Trump in the head in a rap video, or Eminem saying the same. All of them had more means and more provocative threats than this old guy made. The one question is, did he even meet true threat standard? The most famous true threats case involves threats to the president. An African-American man stepped up at an anti-war Vietnam War protest and said, if they give me a gun, the first person I'm going to put in my sights is LBJ. And the Supreme Court said, that's just political hyperbole. You can't prosecute somebody for that. It has to be a serious, basically it has to be imminently possible. It has to be a true threat. Either it has to be imminent or seriously possible. If it's not seriously possible, it's not a true threat. It's just some idiot yipping.
Well, some people would argue that some of his Facebook posts probably even if it's arguable, close enough, it'll get you into trouble. The FBI's argument is he had the means because he had the weapon that, not the weapon, he had the firearm that he said he had in one of his Facebook posts. But my point is, like, if they're following this guy,
a lot of those that was not, I mean, a true threat should have been, I'm going to boom, boom, boom. Not hey, welcome, Mr. Idiot. I have a gun. That's too vague. That should not fit the definition of true threat, because otherwise, anybody asserting anything about a gun will now be called a true threat. It's just too. I mean, put it this way: did he say something worse than the guy that the U.S. Supreme Court said, I'm going to put LBJ in my scope as soon as I get my gun.
Well, I'll take the one step further. I'll say, look, even if he did, they're following him, they're tracking him, they're surveilling him. They know that he's impaired. They know that he doesn't get around. They know that if he leaves his house, they're going to
he's
see
not
it.
a high risk, right? I mean, there's two different issues. One is, did he fit the federal criminal definition of the statute? And my point is, it's not even clear he did. That I kept looking for. I was like, okay, what's the what escalated this guy? Well, what may here? I mean, to give an example, every year there are thousands of people who send in letters and make phone calls saying they're going to kill the president. They don't go do search warrant raids on any of them, for the most part. So I was like, what was it about this guy? I was like, one, he's not doing it anonymously. He's doing it under his own name. He's the easiest person in the world to track. That tells you right away it's probably not serious. Second, and again, that's the requirement, serious. Second, these statements are just too vague. If saying I'm going to put LBJ in my scopes is, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, not prosecutable because it's political hyperbole, then saying what this guy said is political hyperbole. It needs to be, I'm going to boom, boom, not I wish death on somebody. Even that doesn't count. That's why Madonna, I mean, that's, even though, again, or anything he said, is it that much worse than what Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Madonna, Kathy Griffin, the New York Play Theater people did, or a random statement any day of the week against Trump on Twitter? I mean, these people were threatening his death all the time, hoping for his death all the time. It still wasn't considered a true threat because of the Watts decision of 1969. And so my view is they don't even have that. They definitely don't have serious imminent risk when they put him under investigation, such that he needed to be a high-profile target. And then you get to the third issue. Well, did they really need to execute a search warrant? Did they need to execute it in this manner? They knew this was going to happen, and they just basically wanted a pretext to murder the guy? What exactly happened and how it went down? Why wasn't it handled in entirely different manner? It sounds like classic excessive force. So my guess is they'll claim he had a gun. Maybe they'll claim he fired. But here's the other thing. If any of that really happened, we would have had that story right out of the gate.
Well, I mean, for goodness sake, they have. I mean, the FBI is going to be wearing body cam footage or body cams when they do this.
Probably not. By the way, if they did, I guarantee it's gone now. I mean, because again, if he had done any of these things, we would have seen it right away. I'm sure there was somebody with footage in there, but my guess is, but the fact that we didn't told me, okay, they just went in and shot the guy, and then they're going to make up a story later, and they knew they had an easy pretext for it. And so now this is a reminder to everybody out there: don't say stupid stuff online. I've been saying that for a long time. These people will try to yip. I kick people off the board when they say stupid things, and no refund, because that's a violation of the policies. My only rule is it's okay to be stupid. It's okay to be a criminal. It's not okay to be both. And that's when you get kicked off the board. Or you're basically a disguised spook, which there's always one or two of those that show up on the board. Don't you think we should? Our only remedy is violent revolution? Wouldn't you agree, Mark?
Yeah. Thanks, Ray Epps.
Langley, and learn how to rewrite a provocative script, my friend.
There was one genuine misunderstanding where someone posted a link to a crypto scam, and I think to highlight it, and then someone fell for it and then thought that he was promoting the crypto scam. But come on, Ray Epps is not welcome.
This guy is described by his neighbors as a teddy bear. This is not a guy you go in and do a search warrant raid on.
But a 6 o'clock raid, it's like the Waco raid. Like you know that what was his name?
This is honestly worse than Ruby Ridge and Waco, because at least there was a factual predicate of concern in both cases. And what they did was ridiculously excessive. But to be honest with you, they had less factual predicate for this, less policy rationale. I mean, at least they claim to be going in to save the kids. Now, they murdered most of the kids, but at least they claim to be going in to save the kids in Waco. I mean, here they had no excuse.
No, but none. Koresh, the argument was that they knew he went into town every day or twice a week. They could have stopped him at any point there.
Oh, yeah.
This guy, you could stop anytime, or not a 6 o'clock raid, not a midnight raid.
They knew he went to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
right? They could have gone in and done a search warrant raid any time. And apparently, again, they went there the day before, and apparently he said something on social media like, "I'll be ready for you," and you come back. Okay, then you know what's going on. You don't go back there under those circumstances. You work at it. There's really just no reason to have this guy be a high profile guy. Period.
All right. Well, speaking of firearms, Robert, the Michigan story. Look, I trust the Gateway Pundit. I trust what I verify. They ran a story, a breaking story last week, which everybody was citing, retweeting, to the effect that Michigan voter fraud has been basically definitively blown wide open. That there was they obtained a police report showing that they made a discovery of, it was, I think, hundreds of thousands of problematic ballots that had addresses that didn't exist, that were written in the same hands. Where I got suspicious is it sounded a little bit like the Minority Report orgy of evidence. They found ballots, guns, silencers, all this stuff. Like, I was like, okay, man, you could, if it were to sell me on a story, you could have stopped without the guns and the silencers, because I don't know who's going to war over the ballots. But so Gateway Pundit runs this story that apparently they basically discovered a ring of, I don't know, what do you call it? Ballot harvesting. The company that's behind this, the names are all redacted, but apparently it's sort of like they sell it off as, what do they call it? Voter outreach. They have people going, trying to get people to sign up to vote. They give them incentives so that some of the people working it, they go out and they get people to sign up, and they get incentives if they get more people to sign up. What might have sounded like it ended up happening was that these people working for the company, in order to, get their bonuses, get their perks, get their gifts, whatever, would just lie about people signing up. They were hand filling out ballots themselves. And there was a police report filed that the Gateway Pundit article goes through. So unless you think that the police report is itself totally bogus or bunk, there's that. And it details redacted names working for redacted companies, harvesting, collecting ballots, signing people up, filling things out by hand. The only people who would talk seem to be ones who are doing their job legitimately, but were aware that others might not have been doing their job legitimately. What do you make of this Michigan story? Is it too good to be true, or is it evidence that is now just coming to light, but too bad, so sad, too late?
You might want to check out the board. They have a good Barbie Trudeau meme up currently. that looks too realistic.
Let me go here.
So I first heard about this case actually on January 6th in Washington, D.C., sitting in a high-ranking Trump official's offices.
This is January 6th, 2021.
Yes,
Okay.
the January 6th, the infamous now January 6th, right? So in fact, that's why I wasn't down at the Capitol. He said, "Hey, you should come out. You come over to the offices. We got to get a great view. Let's chat about the whole thing. What's going on? What may go on in Congress? You can help organize from here." And I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea. Thank God." So I wasn't down there for all the shenanigans. We got to watch it all on live TV. All it was crazy. But before it even all that stuff started, we could watch Trump's speech there and the rest. I forget who it was that came in, but somebody came in that was another high-ranking official, and he explained what had happened a month or two ago in Michigan, talking about how this whole thing was one big scam, top to bottom. And this guy was like an old school guy, old political hand, right? So he's not going to be someone that's prone to conspiracy or anything like that. He was, and apparently, and it was all about Barr, and it was about a key person in the Justice Department that apparently was being promoted for federal judge, that they got pulled from the federal judicial nominations because he was one of the people that, in exchange for, he believed, getting through on his federal judgeship, sat on the investigation. And this is what the story, and they told me, and they said it happened in Michigan, and they said, look, we caught him red-handed. We caught this is the front side of 2,000 Mules. 2,000 Mules is the back side. This is the front side. Well, you know who else caught part of this? James O'Keefe did. James O'Keefe, remember with
the Somalian
with the Somalis in Minneapolis, where they were driving around with multiple ballots, etc. So what the last part of the operation is delivering the fake ballots. And what I mean by fake ballots is they're ballots either who people are not constitutionally qualified to vote, such as they're dead, or they don't live there, they live in a mailbox supposedly, The method of the ballot is that it's not a constitutionally qualified method because the signatures don't match, or the ballot was coerced and not done in secrecy or blackmailed or bought or something like that. And then, of course, the third part is that ballot was not canvassed and counted in a constitutionally correct way according to the rules set by the individual state legislature. But part of the front end of this process was getting fake registrations in the first place and getting fake ballot requests in the first place. And those people who had no interest in voting, who didn't even want to register, they decided to register them without them even knowing they were registered, and request ballots without them even knowing they'd requested ballots. Because it's not like if somebody knocked on the door and say, "Did you really vote?" Are they really going to say no? They're going to be like, I'm just going to skip this and move because of the communities, constituencies they're in. Particularly like nursing homes, right? Who's going to know whether, grandma just forgot, right? I filled out her ballot, but, apartment buildings, homeless centers, places that are really tough to actually find a voter to come forward. Remember this happened, though. Remember the Tennessee African-American who somebody voted for him in Arizona under his name? And he was like, I moved from Arizona a year ago. I voted in Tennessee. That's not my vote. Arizona, to this day, has never explained it. That joke of a Governor Ducey never explained it at all. So and the courts just stuck their head in the sand, pretend everything was fine. So what they caught was the front end of this operation, and they caught it in October of 2020. That this was the part of the operation. And by the way, Barr himself had said this was high risk a month before and had lied to Trump saying he was investigating it.
Well, but and then lied to the people when he came out and said, I haven't seen any evidence of any fraud. Or sorry, he said widespread voter fraud. I haven't seen any evidence of widespread voter fraud.
He hadn't even talked to anyone. I mean, Richard Barris and I were telling everybody at the time that was a total lie.
Well, I remember we said, it's like, you didn't look. How could you say you didn't find any? Yeah. But even then, it was so qualified. I haven't seen any evidence of any widespread voter fraud that could have affected the outcome of the election.
When he actually did. In October of 2020, he was brought evidence because this operation was a nationwide operation. The company was based out of Tennessee, so some smart Tennessee prosecutor should look into this. But there was that was nationwide, spending tens of millions of dollars to register people who it was clear didn't actually register. And all you had to do was check. They got basic facts wrong. They would get what happens when you have a fraud machine is that some people do it in a really bad way. So this is why I knew they were terrified of signature matches, that they themselves, what I told Trump, the first call, I said, look, you're going to know whether or not it's an up and up election because they're going to tell you. If they have confidence in a signature match check, they think it was done on the up and up. Even if it wasn't, they think it was. If they're terrified of a signature match check, it means they know it was stolen. They know it was fraud. And so and that's what happened. Nobody wanted to allow any signature match check. The only signature match check that ever took place was on a subset sample in Arizona, and the Democratic Party own expert said double-digit percentage of signatures didn't match, which was 10 times more than the margin of victory in the state. What happens here is when you have a fraud machine where you outsource the fraud, the advantage of outsourcing the fraud to independent contractors and other people is that it's tough for them to tie it back to you. And you can get anybody to do it. This is why the fraud took place in weird places. Fraud took place in Tennessee. Fraud took place in Nebraska. Fraud took place in South Dakota. Fraud took place in states that weren't even competitive. Why? Because they just announced to the whole world there's going to be a bunch of ballots available. The safe is empty. The safe is open. The safe is unlocked. The door is unlocked and security's gone. And what happened is in one county, you had somebody willing to go in and steal some ballots. In the neighboring county, you didn't. And that's why you had wild anomalies all across the country that had nothing to do with Dominion. It kept trying to scream there, but it's this was systematic. But a downside to outsourcing fraud is you get some real dumb nitwit fraudsters.
This is what I sort of was able to more easily understand. They're saying that for some of them, the addresses didn't exist. So they go see someone, you want to vote? Yeah, sure. I'll fill in your details. And they just fill in on whatever. Others, they were using schools. I'm imagining they were going to get homeless people. They say, well, do you have an address? No, we'll just give you a school down the street. Some of the fraud as explained in the addresses on the ballots, the anomalies, like thousands being written in the same handwriting, I can understand it. Are they getting instructions
They
to
didn't even
be?
change of it. What happens, because I know this from like true fraud in the voter signature, in the signature context for getting on the ballots, is what happens is you outsource it to third-party contractors. They get paid per signature. Not all the time these days, but they used to. Some percentage of the people that you got out there would just make up signatures to increase their pay. Some people that you would get were just lazy and would just make, and some would make stuff up in a half-ass way. I mean, like, again, the fraud wasn't sophisticated, because when you outsource the fraud, it's no longer, you're getting whatever the outsourced person is, and that quality is going to be up, down, all over the place. This is why they were terrified of a signature match check. A sophisticated, organized voter fraud organization would have made sure the signatures would have hacked in and got voter signatures in other ways, would have found other means to do it, would have had a sophisticated mechanism of doing the signatures. They knew they had outsourced the fraud so much that they knew a bunch of people would have done it in a half-ass, idiotic way that everybody would laugh at. And that's what this person got caught doing.
I mean, just so everybody appreciates, it's like anybody who's ever done door-to-door sales, or like you hand flyers up, say, okay, we'll pay you per flyer that you hand out. And some people will run hard and give them in each envelope. Other people might slip 2 every 3 houses. And some idiots just dump the entire bag in a garbage and say, I delivered 1,000 ballots, give them, or whatever.
Exactly.
So
I mean, look at DeSantis. DeSantis has been hiring some of these same people, and you get these like potheads that show up on people's doors being recorded saying all kinds of terrible stuff because they're not honest volunteers, right? So you're trying to astroturf it. Oh, look at my great volunteer organization. You're paying people, and that's the problem with this. But yeah, I have no doubt the Michigan fraud story is correct. I have no doubt, because I heard it way back January 6, 2021. What it really shows, somebody should come up with a meme. It's from The Godfather, at the end, where Marlon Brando says, I didn't know it was Barzini all along. And they could have Trump as Marlon Brando saying, I didn't know until the end it was Bill Barr all along. Barr covered up the Hunter Biden scandal. Barr covered up the election theft of 2020.
We're gonna get to the Barr. Is it next one? No, we're gonna get up to covering up the Hunter Biden.
That's
stuff.
why he's on air saying, please indict and send Donald Trump to prison so he can't get reelected president, and throw my ass and fat ass in prison along with Christie.
Robert, but the question is this. They filed a police report in October. I think it was October 2020. It was in advance of the election.
Yeah, and this is why they instead were doing the fake Whitmer case. That's what the FBI did. In Michigan, they covered up the election fraud that would have been nationwide in its exposure, while creating a fake Whitmer case to help Biden in Michigan.
There you go.
The same FBI that's busy assassinating old people in Utah.
Lily Tomlin, no matter how cynical you get, it's hard to keep up. Robert, I had not put those two, because I was reading all and listening to this today.
And then remember, those top people in that unit were assigned to the January 6th unit.
So hold on one second. My goodness, I didn't put that together. But so the FBI comes in, takes it over, and then we hear nothing of this. What broke this in 2023?
So somebody got the original state police report that had been forwarded to the FBI, to Jim Hoft and some other people at Gateway Pundit.
I'm allowed swearing, motherfucker, Robert. I mean, it's actually unbelievable. And no, that's it. Now, okay, there you go. Black pill of the night. Yeah, that the Gretchen Whitmer FBI entrapment makes a lot more sense. Entrapment on the one hand, ignoring on the other. Bill Barr coming out saying, I saw no evidence of widespread voter.
And then you have the Hunter Biden laptop. I mean, the FBI was it's confession through projection, the January 6th indictment, as a good transition on Trump, because it was the FBI who organized and orchestrated a conspiracy to interfere and impair people's voting rights in the 2020 election. And now they're indicting Trump for their crimes, much as they impeached Trump for Biden's crimes, to interfere again in the 2024 election.
Robert, okay, so my revelation of the day was they weaponized COVID to prevent Trump from campaigning effectively in 2020, and now they're weaponizing the whole justice system to prevent Trump from campaigning effectively in 2024 with this flipping gag order. But I guess before we even get into the gag order, the grand jury abuse, Robert, in the Trump indictments. I mean, some people are saying the Florida judge is getting it and holding the Justice Department's feet to the fire. I think that's a little bit maybe too optimistic. Explain to the world who might not have heard this yet, what is the nature of the grand jury abuse? Because abuse is an understatement. Explain the grand jury abuse. I think that Jack Smith took advantage of. And is the Florida judge getting it really, or is this just a charade and it'll fizzle out into the wind?
No, I mean, credit to the federal court in Florida for exposing this, because Jack Smith was trying to keep it a secret. So the way the grand jury works is you can use a grand jury, the government can, for the purposes of investigating a crime. The information presented to the grand jury stays the grand jurors themselves, and the government lawyers have to keep secret, not the witnesses who get subpoenaed, not the witnesses who testify, not the lawyers representing them. Government lies about this routinely, tries to intimidate witnesses illegally by this manner all the time. I wonder if any of them are figuring out that some of their novel theories for intimidation and obstruction and civil rights violation could send federal judges that are involved in these cases, like the D.C. judge or the federal prosecutors themselves, to prison. I know they're not thinking that because they've never faced consequences in their lives, because our system has become that corrupt over time. It's atrophied that badly. And people are just seeing it in live time as to the leading candidate for the presidency in 2024 and the former president of the United States. And so, but what you cannot do a grand jury for is to investigate an indictment. Because once you bring the indictment, that ends. You can't use it as a discovery tool. You can use it as a discovery tool up until, theoretically, you're not using it as a discovery tool. You're using it as an investigative tool to determine whether or not you should bring an indictment. The grand jury never has a role in discovery. The grand jury is not a discovery mechanism. Now, prosecutors abuse that all the time, and they effectively use it to develop evidence that really as a discovery tool. And that's because the U.S. Supreme Court years ago basically said, we're not going to supervise prosecutors abusing grand juries anymore. And we're not going to enforce grand jury rights in any meaningful way. And so since then, it's become complete abuse. That's why a federal judge famously said prosecutors could get a federal. I mean, imagine a statement from a federal judge, not a defense lawyer, a federal judge saying you can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. That is as damning as you could possibly get about grand juries in terms of no independence. They've been stripped of it by the court's refusal to discipline prosecutors' wayward path. I don't think prosecutors should have access to a grand jury. I think that the grand jury should control what happens in front of a grand jury. But at a minimum, what prosecutors can never do is use it for discovery. And it's per se being used for discovery when it's post-indictment. Now, you can use it to investigate whether other charges could be added, but you have to be very careful that you don't use that really as a discovery tool. And what the judge warned in Florida, she said, it looks to me like you're using the grand jury as a continuing discovery tool, not just a superseding indictment tool. Now, that's problem number one. Then you have problem number two. He's still using the D.C. grand jury for all of this.
It's already in Florida.
In Florida. There's no ground. Suppose he's looking at obstruction charges. That should be a Florida grand jury. He using D.C. because the D.C. grand jury is so bad, so reprobate, such a joke, every single one of those grand jurors is an embarrassment to an America. And by their own theory, by the way, every one of them could be indicted. I mean, that's how insane this is. But and because all the judges are so corrupt in D.C., and because that's her other issue is venue abuse. There's also a special counsel jurisdictional issue here at some point, but which we'll get to later. But that transitions into the other thing that we found out this week is that they had illicitly subpoenaed Twitter for Donald Trump's private messaging without allowing Trump to even know about it. So Trump couldn't object. Twitter, once Elon Musk bought him, did object, saying there's First Amendment issues here. The judge totally ignored it. When they didn't produce everything immediately while they were asking for a stay from the Court of Appeals, issued an absurd $350,000 sanction that had no basis whatsoever. That was an unconstitutional excessive fine by definition, because it didn't get it exactly when she said to get it. I mean, this is a judge. This is the former chief judge, who's just as bad as the current chief judge. If Republicans had any brains, these actions are impeachable offenses, because this is misuse and abuse of judicial power for political partisan reasons in direct violation of their oath. And then but of course, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals is such a crock, is so filled with, lefties and liberals and Obama people and neoliberals and Biden supporters that but by the way, magically, this case got assigned to 3 Obama and Biden people. Kind of interesting how all these Trump cases keep getting assigned to liberal judges, right? Random. I don't think so. They just greenlit it and rubber stamped it. And their excuse was, this was the lie the prosecutor told, the lie the judge told, and the lie the Court of Appeals told, is that Donald Trump was a flight risk and thus couldn't be told about his First Amendment rights being violated.
There's nothing that you can say to make it make sense as to how this is not overtly criminal. I mean, he's running for president. He's got Secret Service protection. He's currently campaigning, and the flight risk would be about disclosing to him that Jack Smith is coming after his Twitter account that they can't tell him about, and that Twitter cannot tell him about or disclose to the public, for fear that he might delete his Twitter account as if there wouldn't be backups. I mean, none of it makes any sense. But I don't want to use the analogy or the hyperbolic expression. How are people not getting into trouble for this? But the bigger question is, who would get them into trouble for this? Because the people who need to get into trouble are the ones who get people into trouble.
Correct. I mean, yeah, it shows the flaw in the system. So it highlights how some court somewhere is going to have to step up to the plate if they're going to salvage judicial credibility, as in terms of any degree of integrity, perception of integrity, impartiality, and apolitical nature. And the second option is for the House of Representatives to take action with impeachments and investigations. And then the third is for state attorney generals, state local DAs to look at cases like the Michigan case, because that was nationwide. Almost every county in the country has jurisdiction to investigate. Somebody step up to the plate and do something about that. Or last, it'll be the court of public opinion in a 2024 election day. In my view, ultimately, it's going to require the real verdict on all of this is going to require election day Trump mandate win. That's the only way the system will wake up. They are fully convinced that as long as they rush a trial, which takes us to the January 6th case. So the judge didn't grant all of the lunatic things the government requested, but she still went way, way, way too far. She's basically prohibiting Trump. She's saying anything that's sensitive information can't be disclosed to the public during an election. And guess what's sensitive? Anything that's embarrassing to the government. That's what's sensitive.
Whatever they say.
Jury testimony, this and this. I mean, they're trying to schedule this trial in January, which, by the way, there's 11.6 million documents and emails. That doesn't even get to the hundreds and hundreds of hours of audio tape recorded interviews. That doesn't even get to grand jury transcripts. That doesn't even get to a range of other information and documentation. There's absolutely no way you could do an impartial trial that the government admits would take several months by January. Here's what the government currently has scheduled for him. Trump in trial all of January and all of February on January 6th. Then in trial all of March and all of April in New York. Then in trial all of May and all of June and part of July in Florida. If that is an election interference, what is? And they want to lock him up before the election day.
No, but they raised the argument, like he's got a campaign. Oh, I'm not going to treat Trump any differently than anybody else who says they've got to work while they're facing trials,
which is patently absurd. And by the way, this corrupt hack of a judge, to give you an idea, some people, were critical that I was talking about not being a fan of foreigners being judges, and I get there's plenty of conservatives that fled terrible jurisdictions that are good judges on the federal bench today. I just still prefer they've been born in America, natural born citizenship. We're required for presidency and for judges. But here's definitely the foreign born who should not be judges. This judge who comes from hardcore communist. She comes, and to give you an idea how crazy communist her grandfather and uncle were, they were kicked out of the Radical Socialist Party in Jamaica for being too commie. That's how so we have the descendant of communist, a foreigner, deciding the 2024 election by abusing her judicial power. So this judge is a judge who's previously said on the record, credit here to Julie Kelly for getting the transcript, because this is where judges screw up. In sentencing, they'll yip too much, and their biases and prejudices will just pour out. She basically said Trump should be in jail before he was even prosecuted. That's what she was saying in her prior sentencing. If that isn't bias, what is? I mean, our grounds for recusal and disqualification, which Congress should change these to give you an automatic right of disqualification of the first judge no matter what, number one. Number two, the standards for disqualification need to be substantially reduced so you can disqualify people for a wider range of grounds. And third, the person deciding the disqualification position can never be the judge themselves being sought to be disqualified.
But just so everybody appreciates right now, the gag order pertains to sensitive materials to be defined by the government, which includes, as far as I understand, everything.
Almost everything. I mean, all grand jury testimony, all witness testimony, a whole bunch of documents and other information. It's almost everything. It's basically almost everything. So it's a complete it's a total gag order. Now, some smart media member should file a challenge because this violates their right of the press and the right of the public to have access to that information independently, which they would have but for this effective gag order disguised as a protective order. Again, this is not protective orders are supposed to be designed very limited. They shouldn't be applied in criminal cases, in my view, in general. That if it's illegal, it's illegal, and if it's not illegal, fine. End of story. And to give an idea, the judge completely lied about the law because the judge said, and you still have idiots running around saying this, said that you're only supposed to defend yourself inside the courtroom, not out there in the court of public opinion. The Supreme Court said just the opposite in the leading case called Gentile versus State Bar of Nevada. It was part of the Barnes Brief Substack this week. And I'm going to quote from that you can get at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. The duty of a defendant is and its defense counsel is to demonstrate in the court of public opinion that the client does not deserve to be tried. And to the extent the press and public rely upon either the defendants or the attorneys for information because the attorneys are well informed, this proves the value to the public of speech by defense counsel. If the dangers of their speech arise from its persuasiveness, from their ability to explain judicial proceedings, or from the likelihood their speech will be believed, these are not the sort of dangers that can validate any restrictions. The First Amendment does not permit suppression of speech because of its power to command assent. So the federal court, the U.S. Supreme Court specifically rebutted exactly what this judge said. Trump has a right to defend himself in the court of public opinion, especially when this whole case is about the election and the election upcoming. It is ludicrous that there is any protective order at all limiting Trump's speech or his counsel's speech. I think the only mistake his counsel made was conceding any limitation of any kind. And so they, like the judge, this is apolitical. Quit lying, judge. You're just a fraud. You're a fraud who never belonged on the bench. You should be deported and impeached. That's who she is. She's a fraud, never should have been there, a disgrace that she's on the bench, lying to the public, lying to the people, and there need to be consequences, or otherwise we're about to witness. The whole world is about to witness. All of America is about to witness just how egregious and abusive our justice system can be when they do it to the leading candidate for president of the United States.
Well, I'm laughing and I'm feeling the blood rush to my head only because you're not wrong, Robert. It is every aspect of this case that has been an abuse of the process in terms of the grand jury abuse of going to DC to get all sorts of orders that violate fundamental constitutional principles. Then you get a gag order that says we're sensitive material. I know it's not directly related to the right to avoid self-incrimination, but typically someone wants to talk and say prejudicial things during their trial. Go ahead and do it.
That's your right. That's your right. It's your right in the court of public opinion to do so. Same argument making about Sam Bankman-Fried. And I'm not a fan of Sam Bankman-Fried, just in case people think this is Trump-based. No, it's about Constitution-based. You have a right to defend yourself in the court of public opinion. Courts need to quit abusing their power and trying to prohibit people and punish people for defending themselves in the court of public opinion. But it's especially egregious here, where the entire intent of this proceeding is to interfere in the 2024 election by covering up the fraud that took place in the 2020 election.
Well, but and to gag him at events, at future events, they're gonna
you can't talk about witnesses in certain ways. Well, pretty much everybody who is in his entire orbit. Some of them are running. Mike Pence is running against him.
Mike Pence is going to say,
is he supposed to not talk about Mike Pence?
Can't talk about the Pence card.
Special immunity. This is how insane this is. I mean, there should have been no gag order. Somebody should file a petition. This judge is too stupid to know how to screw you correctly. Get it up through the appellate process. Get up to the Supreme Court. The reality is what all of these cases are pointing to is some judge is going to have to step up and stop this at some level. Otherwise, what they're going to do is destroy the integrity, impartiality, and credibility of the federal judicial and criminal justice process forever in ways that are going to be unrecoverable, in ways that people are going to say, maybe we need to rethink our entire criminal justice system. Maybe we should rethink whether we should have a judiciary with this kind of power in the first place. I mean, those are the kind of questions they're already asking it about. Should we have a CIA? Should we have an FBI? They're going to start asking, we shouldn't have a District of Columbia. And credit to Trump. We talked about it on the show. 3 hours later, Trump came out and made the exact same statement. Said it's time to get rid of D.C., return it, take away the home rule, return it to Congress. No more federal D.C. court system, no more state D.C. court system. We've witnessed this case, and January 6th and in the Antifa cases have all collectively, in the Steve Bannon case, all collectively aggregately prove these places are incapable. Now, one lingering issue in all of this is whether the special counsel is even a constitutional appointee. And we'll get to a case later on about Obamacare and think about some of the things we talk about in that context as to how it might apply here. But it will also apply, even though we have the guns case coming up in a second.
Yeah, we got to skip
Before
over
we
that.
get to guns, natural transition. Speaking of special counsel,
Robert,
the Hunter Biden issue also raises the same issue.
Okay, so let's just summarize this. The facts as you summarize it sounds so preposterously, insanely stupid. Nobody could think it's the case. I forget his name now. Weiss. His name is Weiss, right?
Yeah.
So the special counsel. Hey, Mike Pence is really up to speed because they've appointed a special counsel to investigate Hunter.
Vice.
Well, they've appointed a special counsel to investigate, I guess, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden. It's both or
Oh, no. Well, he didn't answer. He didn't say. He's supposed to disclose at some point. The way a special counsel process is supposed to work is that when there's a conflict of interest, the attorney general can appoint a special counsel. They've written their own regulations for this purpose. It's enforced through a particular statute, which basically gives the attorney general the ability to delegate to others certain things. But there's separate categories here. There's the attorney general. Then there's certain assistant attorney generals who are principal officers because they're appointed by the president with advice and consent of the Senate. And then you have your United States attorneys. Your United States attorneys are given power over a particular district. Geographically, that's the limits of their jurisdiction. And they, too, are appointed directly by the president with advice and consent of the Senate. Here's the key thing. Those assistant attorney generals and those United States attorneys can only be fired by the president. They can't be fired by the attorney general. By contrast, special counsel is theoretically, and this is where it gets tricky constitutionally, is an inferior officer, that he's subject to the whim of the Attorney General. The problem is the regulations and their public statements make it appear that he's not, that he's independent, that he has all the power of a United States attorney.
Who does he answer to?
That's always been the question. Last time this was meaningfully addressed was the context of, that I remember, was Scooter Libby. And I don't think the Supreme Court ever took it up. The Supreme Court addressed the independent counsel statute back in the mid-90s. And Scalia dissented and said he had issues with it. But they didn't have to deal with the special counsel statute. They dealt with that briefly in the Nixon-Watergate case back in 74. And what they've generally said on these inferior officers versus principal officers is they try, as long as the officer does not have final decision-making authority, number one, and number two, is removable at will
By whom?
by a principal officer,
Okay.
then he's an inferior officer and can be appointed directly by a principal officer. As long as he's given that authority by Congress, unless it's the president, and the president can always do it under Article 2. So this is the appointments clause under Article 2, which reads, the president nominates with the Senate as advice and consent principal officers, but inferior officers can be appointed just directly by the president, by courts, or by the heads of department. And they've generally interpreted the last part to mean another principal officer if Congress so authorized. So the question is, how independent is a special counsel? If the special counsel is truly independent, then he's unconstitutional because he's an inferior officer. He's not a principal officer. He hasn't been appointed by the president with advice and consent of the Senate. The way the Patrick Fitzgerald got away with it, and this relates to the transition, we'll get into the Hunter Biden one, in the Scooter Libby case, was he was an actual United States attorney. And he was a United States attorney, but his authority was limited to the Northern District of Illinois. So what was his authority to operate in D.C.? The Attorney General gave it to him as acting Attorney General. Guess who was the acting Attorney General? Was part of that deep state cover-up to finger Libby for something that was actually the CIA. A certain man by the name of James Comey was the Assistant Attorney General at the time, complicit in all that. To make sure Dick Cheney did not get indicted, who was the real source also for outing Victoria Plume. As part of the whole Iraqi war campaign lies. That Robert Mueller was neck deep in, Comey was neck deep in. That's how long back these guys go.
It's difficult enough to keep up with the present, let alone to understand that this fractal goes down for every piece of history.
Multiple layers of the rabbit hole. But basically, if this guy's really independent and there's parts of the special counsel regulation, then he's unconstitutionally appointed because he has the power of a principal officer, but the president didn't approve him. I always thought the Scooter Libby case, the judge made the wrong decision. Because, he was a United States attorney, but for the Northern District of Illinois, his authority doesn't extend past his jurisdiction. So, yes, he's a principal officer for that reason, but that doesn't mean he can just be appointed for any other office under the Attorney General's office. But the other way they got around it is that theoretically the Attorney General can fire him at any time and can override him at any time, though that's not real clear in the regs. So they want to get away with in the court of public opinion, pretending that Jack Smith is independent and pretending that David Weiss is independent. But in fact, legally, they can't be.
No, but
because if they are, then they're unconstitutionally appointed and all the indictments have to be dismissed.
And if they are dependent, then you have, or not independent, if they're not independent, you have President Biden persecuting and investigating.
What's really happening, of course.
But people have to appreciate David Weiss. David Weiss is the guy who dragged his feet on the Hunter Biden investigation, who let a number of the serious charges lapse by way of prescription or statute of limitations in the states. How the hell do they appoint David Weiss, corrupt, crooked, incompetent, to be the special counsel to look into his dad, apparently? I mean, how does it possibly happen?
There's a couple of things with Weiss. One is some people were saying he's still a principal. So the special counsel statute is written assuming that you will go out and find an independent third party, independently vet them and investigate.
Outside of government. Outside of government.
They have, in Patrick Fitzgerald, they didn't do that. With John Durham, Bill Barr didn't do that. And the reason they didn't do it is probably part of the reason that the Scooter Libby didn't get his indictment dismissed, is the district court in that case said that because he was a United States attorney, he was a principal officer, and thus there was no violation, even though he was being his jurisdiction had been extended in ways that were directly contrary to his principal officer position. So there's a temptation to do it for that reason alone. Now, the problem with Weiss, however, is Weiss is no longer a principal officer. Weiss was appointed so Weiss was the acting U.S. attorney going way back in Delaware. Tight ties to the Biden political machine, even though he's a Republican. He's an establishment Republican. The Trump just went along with other appointee. You're supposed to go. The two Democratic senators have a lot of say in this in Delaware, but basically this is where Trump got rolled as he went along and played with the system. But this wasn't a natural Trump appointee. This is a guy who was acting U.S. attorney from the Obama days, who Trump just let keep in and officially made him a nominee. But those are 4-year terms. He was nominated in 2018. That expired in 2022. He's now acting U.S. attorney. To my knowledge, he has not been reappointed with advice and consent of the Senate. Biden just didn't fire him. So he's one of these acting U.S. attorneys. So now the problem they've run into is they ran into a problem with the judge. And then that got public because of the judge saying, hold on a second, you got a sweetheart deal buried in the diversion agreement that doesn't make any sense. And so now they need to get out of that problem. But Hunter's people are like, no way are we going to publicly go on the record and say that immunity is limited. Not going to do it. So how do they get out of that problem? Well, they need to get out of that judge's chambers. So the problem is Weiss is only the acting U.S. attorney, really an assistant U.S. attorney, authority in Delaware. He has no authority outside of Delaware. So how do you transfer it out? You make him a special counsel. So you make him a special counsel, not because you're doing this noble act of making sure there's independent investigation and blah, blah, blah. They made him special counsel. There's a little bit of benefit that it hinders Congress's ability to investigate what he's up to. But that isn't the primary reason. The primary reason you found out about the next day when Weiss moved to dismiss the Hunter Biden indictment in Delaware on grounds that, now that we think about it, venue really is better in D.C.
Well,
we want to go judge shopping. We definitely want to go jury shopping so that Hunter, by God, can please get acquitted if this does somehow go to trial, right? They know D.C. His last name is Biden. They'll be acquitted. I was doing so much crack, I forgot about paying my taxes. It'll be the crack defense.
They did acquit Sussman in D.C., but Robert, they had
dead to rights. The lawyer dead to rights.
Not to gloss over this, it's an important point. What are the limitations? Apparently, they say that as special counsel now, Weiss is no longer required to answer to Congress, answer to the public, provide information, so he can no longer be questioned.
That's only kind of true. Legally, that can't be true for the reasons I talked about.
Okay.
Right? So that's just, here's the thing with the current special counsel stuff. It's just their own little internal BS rules, right? And whenever they are confronted with this in the courts, they say, we can just scrap these rules anytime we want. By the way, it's what they did argued in Nixon, which Scalia talked about in the Morrison, in his concurrence and dissent in Morrison on the independent special counsel. They said, look, back in the Nixon case, you don't have to worry about these being improperly appointed principal officers because they're being appointed pursuant to regulations that we can just get rid of tomorrow because they're just written for us. They're not like actual statutes. And so because of that, all of this is bogus. And so they really can't hide them from Congress. They can try to play games, but being special counsel gives them no immunity whatsoever.
But you said they play special games. The games take years to play out. So by the time we find out that Weiss was not a proper special counsel and had to answer the questions that he refused to answer.
Even if he was a proper special counsel, that's no grounds to object to Congress's authority over him. Congress didn't create the special counsel statute. That's what's key to understand. The Attorney General did it himself. So the Attorney General can't say, you Congress don't have any oversight over this little position over here. I'm just going to create it out of thin air. No, that doesn't work that way.
But Robert, I just want the entire world to understand the stupidity. And someone who's watching, people are clipping in real time. Clip this in real time. The special counsel that they have appointed to investigate Biden is the same special counsel that dragged his feet on investigating Hunter.
Yeah.
Let
He
many
was
of
the
the
guy who orchestrated the cover up and orchestrated the sweetheart deal.
well, but
They had to give him this power because they got to get it away from that judge.
But hold on, he dragged his feet on the investigation, let a number of the serious charges lapse for statute of limitations, struck a sweetheart deal that no one has ever seen in the history of law, which might or might
The whole
not
thing
follow.
was designed to cover up for Joe Biden. That's the whole thing is about. And broadly speaking, it would implicate deep state actors and because Biden's corruption embeds with a lot of other people. But this is all about protecting Joe Biden. And Weiss did his job to protect Joe Biden. And they had to give him a new position to make sure that this judge can't interfere with that.
And so now he has been appointed special counsel to investigate the man he has been protecting for the last 7 years. Robert,
I mean, the appointment wasn't even even though they made an announcement and tried to pretend like it was some big independent act, it was done solely so that he could get rid of the case in Delaware. That's the sole reason. And my guess is he sits on the case and doesn't even try to bring an indictment right away. So now what this most likely does is it puts more pressure back on Papa Joe to post-election issue broad pardons. It's back to that is where he's going to have to. And Biden's going to have to issue pardons to protect himself ultimately.
What about what sanctions could?
What other component? The other advantage to all this, because it got outed how broad the immunity was, as people had brought up on the board, that meant that Congress, the House, could subpoena Hunter, and he wouldn't have any Fifth Amendment rights.
Yep.
They're going to deliberately hold back the case as long as possible so that now he does have Fifth Amendment rights and he can't be subpoenaed by the House.
While the immunity and while the deal is in limbo, he can't be.
The goal was that this deal be done, but be done so secretly that nobody knew he didn't have Fifth Amendment rights.
Holy shit, Robert. And then meanwhile, now Weiss is going to go.
And by the way, there's no grounds for the transfer. So they brought the case in Delaware. Hunter Biden didn't object to jurisdiction in Delaware. There clearly is jurisdiction in Delaware in the sense of certain tax acts took place there. Where are they claiming he's a resident of? I guess they're now claiming he's a resident of D.C. or California. We'll see about that.
Where's the girl? Where was the house that he was renting for?
But under the misdemeanor statute whereby he could transfer it under tax, that deadline had passed. So it's up to him to transfer it. He didn't. There's no grounds for them to dismiss this case in Delaware. Instead, it's Weiss is just lying to everybody, saying, we can only try this in D.C. It's going to go to trial. It can only be D.C. or California. He's just lying about that, completely lying about that. I mean, so that's what a fraud this prosecutor is. So the House should absolutely subpoena his rear end and make him talk about a lot of this and let him play games and dodge the bullet as much as he wants to try to. But they're going to use pending investigation. That's the real excuse. It's not that he's special counsel. It's that pending investigation. I can't talk about things under investigation. And for that to work, they need there to be no indictment until after Election Day. So what this really does is they'll either cut the sweetheart immunity deal post Election Day, or Joe is going to have to pardon everybody to cover his rear.
Robert. This was what we had.
Doesn't that look like Trudeau looks like Barbie?
I'll tell you one thing. It looks more like Dylan Mulvaney than anybody else, and I say that almost as a compliment.
Well, who else looks like Dylan Mulvaney? Ben Shapiro.
Well,
that was a meme from our board.
Oh, I didn't see that. I'm gonna have to go find that one. All right, Robert. Look, if we didn't get the black pills, that's a black pill. Up the wazoo with.
I mean, people are getting a crash course on how corrupt our system has.
It hasn't always been like this, or it has always been like this.
It's always been like this, just not at this scale, right? It's usually happening to some political dissident you don't care about. It's usually happening to a Sam Bankman-Fried, a Jeffrey Epstein, some local schmuck, some local dissident, a Eugene V. Debs. Some 75-year-old veteran in Provo. It's happening to those folks. It's not happening to the president of the United States.
But
It's
this
not
is-
happening on behalf of the president of the United States.
And this is why when people come to, they talk to me, they talk to you, they say like, the system is corrupt. This is how they frame me. And like, it's so bloody complex. And it's not to say it's not true, but the broader interest is not, okay, dude, you have your fights. I got to pay rent tomorrow. This is in your face. The dude who corruptly gave Hunter Biden the sweetheart deal is now the special counsel to Joe Biden, and Mike Pence is all cool with it. It's good. It's all good. And, Robert, before we get onto it, now we have a good break for a segue, but let me bring up a number of chats. You got your cigar in your mouth in this one. Okay, got a few here. Watone says, mark my words, there is trouble brewing eastern border of Poland. Touch the riot, says, oh, son of a gun. Viva, your eyes are just as bad as mine. You have to read my name right before, but not today. Touch the rot, it is not. Touch the riot. I laughed. Okay, Dapper Dave, any thoughts on Matt Wallace tweets about the wildfires being orchestrated? I haven't seen that, but we know that a number of them have been man-made. Arson or accidental doesn't, might not change much. They've been weaponized. Nike 7 says, I am exasperated. Exacerbated. COVID equals climate change. Many give lip service to the, I guess that's COVID hoax, the CC hoax. No creators are attacking it with the scientists the way Malone and McCullough did. It is the heart of everything, in my humble opinion. The jackals of Terra Argentum. I was living close to the Gonzalez house when Janet Reno had their home stormed and Elian stolen.
Yeah.
The family was destroyed by it. Reno is a textbook example of the evil cripple trope in theater. Arkansas crime attorney says, come on, all.
Well, you know why they had so many floods in the Midwest in the 90s? Janet Reno took all the dikes with her to D.C.
I was going with like soil was too dry to absorb the water, Robert. Come on. That's not
politically incorrect joke, but I still remember it from the 90s.
And
I heard it from a Democrat, by the way.
I'm in trouble for laughing. All right. Arkansas crime attorney says, come on, all. Let's go into that building tomorrow and take our country back. That's more of a true threat, especially since they did go into the building. That was Ray Epps who said that, but he's a poor schmuck he's the victim of a conspiracy theory. 1, 2, 3, 4, Ace. Apparently there's a video of the raid recorded by a neighbor. Also, Robert, you rock. Viva, you're awesome too. Don't worry about it. I know where I'm comfortable with myself. Robert does rock. This is Jim Satala. My major problem with the pre-dawn raid was they knew he was armed and was likely to defend his home against intruders, and they did it purposefully. They purposely did this to execute him as a warning to the rest of us. Can't disagree with that. Arkansas crime attorney, good night, guys. I will have to finish later. I have to finish up for my hearing early in the morning, another hearing, because this firm I am working for is so unethical. We got fantastic realist. That is one of the reasons why I support an Article 5 convention of the states, amendments to reform the judicial system. For example, ignotum. On a black pill day, time for something light. Barnes, explain to everyone why Ben Shapiro is the real reason for the Budweiser brand downfall. Oh, he made a joke about Ben. Hold on, we'll get to that one in a second. My head hurts, LOL, but what Barnes said right away applicable. It's double jeopardy as the Senate acquitted Trump already. Does Barnes think this applies? We talked about this last week, Jennifer. Talked about this last week, but yeah, there's Barnes elucidated the arguments for that. I'm not your buddy guy. I cannot think of a bigger hive of scum and villainy than those in DC. 1, 2, 3, 4, Ace. $1 for that Ben Shapiro comment. Robert, what's the deal with Ben Shapiro and Barbie?
No, it's Mulvaney.
Oh,
he looks just like Mulvaney. It's weird. Somebody put the meme up on the board, and somebody put it back in the chat too. The meme, and you look at it's when he smiles, he looks freakishly like Mulvaney.
Oh, and there was a comment. Hold on, actually, I can still bring this one up.
They just posted the comparison if you want to look at it, the board.
Let me go here. I'm going to have to go save that. Jeez, I got 1,000 comments to get to here. Okay, so hold on. Save image as, and I'll just save it as, let's go with Shapiro. Give me a second. Now I'm going to go.
Basically, Mulvaney looks like Shapiro with a wig.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Stop. Window here. Okay.
It's because of the smile. It's the smile.
I don't see it. I see how someone can say it. I would say it would be more. Who is it? Chris Kattan? Chris Kattan would be Dylan Mulvaney more than Ben Shapiro. Although that is, I mean, it's still it's kind of funny. The internet will get the humor. Geez Louise, Robert. I had
all
something.
right. We got some guns cases.
Okay, go for it.
Guns cases. We got the DEI lawsuit, ESG lawsuits, Target lawsuits. A little bit about Andy No.
Yeah.
Missouri versus Biden, Obamacare, Washington doctors and ivermectin and licensing about COVID, and Tenpenny, Ohio. Some of those we'll say for the after party.
Yeah, there's
some
some of these
we'll get to here. Some of them we can get to quick. The guns are actually pretty quick, actually.
Okay, you do it because I don't know anything about the guns.
So the ghost gun ban we talked about previously that Biden's ATF had imposed, the district court stopped it. The Fifth Circuit stopped it. Supreme Court overturned the stay. They haven't issued a substantive ruling. But what happened is, unsurprisingly, Roberts jumped ship with the liberals. It will be surprising to a lot of people that told me that Barrett was going to be a great justice, and I said we could do a lot better than Barrett. Amy Coney Barrett was the fifth vote to allow Biden administration to ban ghost guns. And really, that's banning a whole bunch of ways of making your own guns and selling it in a whole bunch of ways. I think ultimately that ghost gun ban will be found unconstitutional, but it's classic of Barrett to, impose her virtue signaling ways unfortunately, against the Second Amendment in this case. And in Illinois upheld their ban on assault weapons in a split decision, but the way they did it is they said that the plaintiffs had procedurally defaulted their Second Amendment claim. So the Illinois Supreme Court did not address whether the assault weapon ban and the magazine ban violated the Second Amendment. I don't think that will prevent that case from being litigated. There's a parallel case going forward in the federal courts or going up to the U.S. Supreme Court, given the case we talked about last week. Because the Illinois Supreme Court didn't try to take on Bruin. It avoided the whole thing by saying we're not addressing the Second Amendment issues because we think you procedurally defaulted. Several justices dissented, saying that's nonsense. We should be addressing the issue. But that's what happened on the guns cases.
Okay. And now the ones that I might know a little bit more about, let's just get back to this here. The Biden corruption. Oh, the Kellogg. Do we do the Kellogg DEI?
That's up next. We got, some great work by Stephen Miller's America First legal organization.
So this is, we've talked about this as a legal theory repeatedly. Shareholders who didn't buy into these companies so they can tank the value of their stock by adhering to idiotic, stupid, politically motivated diversity, inclusion, and equity, die. To quote from Tim Pool. So one got a letter of demand. Kellogg's, I think, got served with a lawsuit. Basically,
Kellogg's got the letter of demand. Target got the lawsuit.
Okay, so Kellogg's got the letter of demand, basically saying you guys are shitting on an icon of a brand because you're doing stuff that none of us signed up for, which is going to compromise the value of your brand. Target got sued. Basically the same, you'll flesh out the details, but the same idea that these companies are going woke, they're going broke. Shareholders and people who did not invest for this. It goes against the very essence of the reason why some people did invest in it. Kellogg's in particular, all-American brand, an icon of a legend of a history, and it pisses it away on diversity, equity, inclusion, racist, discriminatory policies and hiring, application, and adhering to politics that nobody bought into the company for. Do you want to start with Kellogg's and then maybe go to Target, or do you? I mean, is this the way?
Kellogg, yeah,
go for it.
So, basically what's interesting is the question was how to make these suits SEC suits, how to call it fraud on the market, how to say
Security and Exchange Commissions, which is, you say, shareholder value being compromised by fraudulent misrepresentations or something along those lines.
Exactly. It was for those out there. I went and bought the company made a public statement, and I went out and bought their stock based on that public statement. They knew at the time they made that public statement that it wasn't true. When the fraud gets exposed, the stock value goes down. And so I lost value because they lied. That's fraud on the market.
And if I may just analogize it, remember everybody, when everyone's like, well, what if Rumble goes the way of YouTube? And Robert and I were talking about this. Well, they've made public representations that they support political free speech. And if they one day say, Viva and Barnes got a little too political, so we're going to demonetize. Well, that some people might say that's fraudulent misrepresentation. It's not going to happen. But it is the argument that ought to have been made for YouTube. It hasn't been made quite so much, but it's a different context. They're making it now for Kellogg. Sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Chris Pavlovsky would be broke forever because as I said on the show, I'd sue him. And he was completely okay with that, making that public commitment. So yeah, they went. And so what's credit to America First Legal. I mean, we've been talking about this idea being a good idea that needed research, investigation, development. I've been doing some of it on the Pfizer COVID vaccine side, but I have limited bandwidth, can't handle everything. And it's great to see America First Legal and Stephen Miller stepping up into the gap. And they really researched it. And their theory is this. It's a couple of things. That all these companies make public promises that they will have equal employment opportunity employment policies. So what they're doing is any company that's using diversity, equity, inclusion to do racial quotas or gender quotas or special, race training, implied bias programs, etc., that this violates those civil rights laws. But rather than bring suit for civil rights violations, they're bringing suit for shareholders on grounds that this diminishes their stock value and it's fraud because it violates laws they said they were complying with. The second claim they're making is, look, you make very broad statements about your brand and how you're protecting your brand. In the case of Kellogg and Target, in both cases, you're saying this is for families, this is for kids, this is for children. And then you went and promoted things under diversity, equity, and inclusion, under environmental, social governance, and all that jazz that are directly contrary to that brand for many families and many children. And what that did is when the market saw that, the market negatively reacted. It diminished your brand value, which then diminished your stock value, meaning you lied because you said you were protecting your brand when you weren't. You said you were looking at the risks of these policies when you weren't. And then they're enhancing that by saying, let's look at the conflicts of interest. These board members are often connected to these non-governmental organizations that they're diverting funds to help fund and in infiltrating these institutions and corporations for the purposes of these ideologies of these other organizations that are giving them kickbacks and privileged positions in the community in exchange for them, marching through the institutions and effectively defrauding their customer base, their consumer base, and their stockholder base. And that's fraud, and hence we're going to bring securities claims for it.
Here, let me bring this up. Just we can see what we're looking at here, right? Hold on. Yeah, there we go. Okay, boom. Despite the immense trust that hardworking American mothers and fathers have placed in Kellogg's, management has discarded the company's long-held family-friendly marketing approach to politicize and sexualize its product. Kellogg's, like, oh my God, it's great. Yeah, well now it's a lot more than great now. The 2021 together
it's groomer great.
It's Robert, you just created a meme there. Someone's going to work with that. Together with Pride Cereal, a partnership with GLAAD, which describes itself as the world's largest lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer media advocacy organization, opposes parental rights to know about transgender transitions in public schools, promotes censorship and cancel culture, depicts beloved, and iconic characters such as Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, Snap, Crackle, and Pop, cheering around a bowl of rainbow heart-shaped cereal. You can't make this stuff up, but you could. But no one would believe it.
I mean, it's a Tigger saying, "Oh, come sit on my lap, little boy." I mean, that's the new Kellogg marketing campaign.
September 2022, the company spun up an old-time lunchbox favorite by releasing limited edition Cheez-It boxes featuring drag queen RuPaul and Jersey Shore star Snooki. Don't know who the hell Snooki is. 2022, Pop-Tarts, limited edition, neon pink block party lemonade Pop-Tarts. I'm sorry. The box illustrations depict cartoon drawings.
Well, I mean, it reads like a Babylon Bee parody. I mean, that's how insane these policies are.
Oh my!
And then they brought the suit against Target because Target's out there targeting kids with trans stuff. And they're like,
Oh,
and in Target's case, Kellogg, there's been significant diminution in value. But in Target, it was $10 billion in lost stock value. What does that mean? That means the class action is a $10 billion class action against Target.
oh
So because
my
they could get
goodness.
doubly whacked because they said, look, you were looking out for risk when you weren't. You promised one brand you were doing something different. You said you were complying with the employment laws. You weren't. And so it's probably not a coincidence that this same last week or two, BlackRock is busy no longer using the phrase ESG that they helped invent, create, originate, and propagate. One of the biggest hedge funds in the world that owns half of Ukraine at the moment, and large parts of our housing market, but a lot of other things too. But McDonald's was busy scrubbing its entire website of ESG and diversity, equity, inclusion references. But who may be up next is banks like U.S. Bank. I got a lawsuit against U.S. Bank, and it's clear they had discriminatory DEI, ESG policies in place to screw my client and likely others. And that, what's now being, U.S. Bank was put on a risk, Moody's, I believe, put them out there as downgraded their rating. I mean, rarely you see these big banks downgraded their ratings. So that's a stock to short. But I think they're probably going to have some stock class actions coming because it looks like they've been doing these kind of things systemically. All these companies have been asleep at the wheel, thinking they were going to get rich pushing this DEI, ESG nonsense. And just as so many Hollywood companies have gotten hammered, now they're getting legally and financially hammered as well. And it's great to see it.
And there's jokes about the getting hammered in there, but no, Robert.
I guess that transitions into Andy. No,
stop it, Robert. Okay, hold on 1 second before we get there. It's about time. It's about bloody time. These companies that forsake shareholder value. I guess they say, well, we thought it would be good for shareholder value, but nobody wants it. Nobody bought these companies for that crap in the first place. You want to politicize your company? Let me know in advance that that's where you're going, and I won't invest my money there.
Don't sexualize products to little kids. How hard is this?
It's very hard for some people. Okay, Robert, Andy, no trial. Oh, hold on 1 second. Hold on. Let me just make sure that we don't have.
Oh man, somebody actually found that together thing. It even looks worse when you look at the box.
Hold on. Is this in our locals?
Yeah.
What are we saving for locals after? We're going to get the locals tips.
Maybe we can save Andy no for locals. Yeah, we'll save Andy no for locals. Otherwise, we got Missouri versus Biden, Obamacare, which is about the appointments clause, which has relevance to the special counsel discussion. Washington doctors and ivermectin and medical boards about COVID misinformation, and then Tenpenny facing an Ohio medical licensure issue. COVID issues too.
This is what we've got for locals.
We have some combination left either for here or locals.
You take it away. What we do for everybody, and then I'm going to send everybody the link for locals right now. What do we
save? Andy, no. Missouri versus Biden, the Washington doctors and COVID licensure, and ivermectin and Tenpenny, Ohio. We'll save that for locals, and we'll do the Obamacare appointments clause as our last case here on Rumble.
Now let's. But hold on.
And for those up there, if you go to the locals, you tip at least $5. We'll answer your question either today or tomorrow, guaranteed.
And I want to just also highlight to everybody out there. Above average merch is out there. Look at this. Look at this.
VivaFry.com.
VivaFry.com. The bumper stickers are I'm not trying to sell our stuff. I love the bumper stickers because nothing says, look at what I have to think, like a bumper sticker when someone's tailgating you on the highway.
In fact, maybe we should do a new one. We should put "we are here" there, and then put "you are here" over on the other side.
Okay. And thus far, my car hasn't been delivered.
That'd be a very appropriate bumper sticker. Right? The person sits there and reads it, and they're like, okay,
well, I'll give everyone the link now. So before you go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, go get the Viva Fry, and you can get a bumper sticker, shirt, or whatever. All right, Robert, finish it up on Rumble. What are we talking about?
So Obamacare, back before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, one of the enforcement mechanisms for Obamacare was a task force that was independently appointed, right? And another one of these independently appointed professional administrative bureaucracies that gets to decide what every private insurance company in the country has to include in their preventative care, primary care insurance packages. So it was challenged on the grounds that the task force, and there's some affiliated agencies with it that were similarly independent, on the grounds that, hey, these task force, the task force and associated groups are not principal officers constitutionally appointed, and so their power violates the appointments clause of the Constitution. That none of these people have been appointed by the president. None of them have been appointed with advice and consent of the Senate. And so, and they have final decision-making authority. And the way they tried to get around it was they're like, well, it could get ratified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, or somebody else could approve it, and so on and so forth. But that's not what the actual statute provides for. It gives final decision-making authority to these independently appointed people who are not, in fact, appointed by the president with advice and consent of the Senate. Nor is the Secretary of Health and Human Services given direct power to appoint them either. They're appointed in this process that's totally outside the Constitution, and they have final decision-making authority. And so even if they're subject to being fired, even if they're subject to being removed, their power isn't subject to being removed or overruled. Their power is final. And so what the district court said is that's the power of a principal officer. And anybody that has the power to make final decision-making authority under a constitution, it has to be either Congress making a legislative decision, a judge making a judicial decision, or they have to be an Article 2 appointee by the president. Has to either be the president, or a principal officer. And a principal officer is appointed by the president with advice and consent of the Senate. And none of these people are that. And so consequently, the entire statute of Obamacare is unconstitutional because its mechanism of enforcement it's effectively its legislation is this professional managerial class process that empowers people completely outside of the Constitution and brags about doing so because it says these people are independent. So the pertinence and materiality of this should be apparent to those looking at the special counsel issues of challenging that Trump could bring challenges to in D.C. and Florida, because you have some similarities, not all perfect analogies, but you have substantial similarities that raise the same constitutional questions. You cannot have an inferior officer have final decision-making authority that's truly independent of the executive branch, or he's an unconstitutionally appointed officer all of whose actions are null and void. And so we'll see how the case turns out. It's another case where America First Legal is actually proactively involved, by the way.
Oh, all right. Now hold on. I'm looking at the Rumble chat just to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything here. Robert, before we head over to locals, let me do one thing. Not that. Oh, come on. Where is it? Here we go. This is it right here. Just going to do some quick ones. Maria Patel, sorry, maybe missed the explanation. Can you please explain the "We Are Here" sticker hat? Everyone in our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community is above average. The curve.
Even the trolls.
Well, incidentally, even the trolls. No question. Intelligence without a moral compass is a liability, not an asset. Write that down. Any thoughts on Sidney Powell possible legal issues? IJ1S. Oh, we've talked about that. But Robert, Sidney Powell.
I don't think there's any update that I know of.
Okay. Van Halo. How do we prevent another January 6th type setup if Trump wins? How do you prevent a January?
Well, just be alert. Don't fall for any stupid traps between now and election day.
More important,
any of these. Oh, you got to give up. Don't vote. Don't think you can make a difference. Just quit. Don't fall for that. Don't fall for any people saying, "Oh, we need 1776 in this way and violent." Anybody saying stupid things that is clearly meant to entrap you, stay away from.
Anybody saying stupid things, chant Fed.
Yeah.
Shut the F up, boomer, like they did with Ray Epps. It's no, there's no question. It's not just if Trump wins, it's to prevent Trump from winning. My black pill fears that they're going to set up a false flag because, cripe, they're trying to provoke a response, and if they can't get it provoked naturally, Hey, FBI's done it over and over and
yeah.
over again. They
Well, I mean, we now
fabricate.
know from Tucker Carlson's expose this past week of what Fox was trying to suppress, which was the chief of the Capitol Police himself said that basically provided testimony that showed at a minimum it was a cover-up, and at some level the evidence he presented pointed to a setup on January 6th.
And this might be a good way to finish it, actually. I reached out to the Capitol Police officer. Let me just make sure I'm not sharing my screen here. I'm not. Give me 1 second. The guy who I reached out publicly, Tarek Johnson. Oh, now I hear. What am I hearing? Oh, son of a gun. I'm hearing something in the backdrop. Robert, you don't hear audio? I hear audio in the back of my head. Okay. Tarek Johnson. I reached out to Tarek Johnson, who. What do I hear? A police pursuit. Sorry, hold on. I'm just gonna have to close a bunch of windows.
I hope that's it.
What the heck am I listening to?
You better get a safe house there in Florida.
Okay, so I'm closing everything. I'm closing everything. There we go. There was a video playing in the backdrop. There's a Jesus Christ, so I look crazy. I heard. All right, Robert, let's go over to now. I've closed all the windows. We're gonna go over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, but now I've got to open up Windows and end the stream here. So ending it on Rumble. Let me just make sure that we're still
We'll
live.
discuss the Andy No verdict, Missouri versus Biden, the big First Amendment censorship collusion case, oral argument this past week at the Fifth Circuit, the Washington doctors suing the state for trying to de-license them over COVID issues that relate to ivermectin, and the similar Dr. Ted Penny case in Ohio. So all of that will be, and answering any question of $5 tips or more over at vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
Now I'm going to end it properly on Rumble, which I have to go actually hit the end button. That's not it. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Okay, so Rumble is here. Let us go to the stream. I'm going to share the link one more time. I see myself now. If I hear my voice, it's going to be there. Locals, ! Come one, come all. As I end the stream right now on Rumble. Thank you all for being here. See you on Locals. vivabarneslaw.locals.com now. God, I'm an idiot. I hear it, Robert. I don't know where it's coming from. Okay, let's do some of the tips before we get into the stories, because there's a lot of tips. M. Sire or MS Sire, M. Skyer, MSCIRE, $5. I'd love to see a sidebar of conversation between Barnes and Anomaly about Trump. Think it would be insightful. Dread Robert, it's $1, but we're going to read it because I just started reading it. January 6, 2017. Yeah, similar without the glowies. Was similar with I think 2017 probably had a lot of glowies too to mess up Trump's inauguration. People don't remember the January 2017. You should buy one of these. Make Canada great for once. Okay. We've got to get to the ones. Why can't any state AGs do anything from Suera, Robert?
Well, I mean, there's things they can do. They're just not doing them.
Debbie_O, $5. Is every single stinking Republican in Washington as compromised as the Dems? They sure do a lot of mean tweeting about stern letter writing with absolutely no action to follow. Yeah, and then they end up on Fox News like Trey Gowdy, who I loved, and he violated my trust. I knew Trumps were going to be going back to back. That's Laney Mack. Okay, we got JCiv86. Last time I checked, Viva is in the news media and should be fine. Well, I don't know what that's about, but I'm not. I'll be fine one way or the other. Trump gagged on DOJ just leaks to the Washington Post. It's a joke. No one has. Yeah, that's the other thing, Robert. They gagged Trump, and then the people who are not gagged leak the shit to the media. Oh, Doc No, $5. Robert Barnes should reach out to Glenn Greenwald or Andy No about filing the free speech journalist brief in opposition to the Trump gag order. Otherwise, it will likely never happen.
Lawyers can't reach out to potential clients. Clients have to reach out to them. Ethically, that's the way they make it.
Itsy Bitsy Spider, $5. Does RFK is at 7%? Does he have more upside over the next few months?
For that, Sports Picks at sportspicks.locals.com is where I put up all my betting analysis, political markets, economic markets, sports betting markets. We already had a profitable weekend on English Premier League this past weekend.
So I was going to say, like, people who I don't bet. If I did, I would have made some money. Jay Hudler, $5. What was the case? Gentili versus?
Gentile versus State Bar of Nevada.
You know, it's funny. There's a coffee shop right up the street from where I used to live in Montreal, and it's spelt Gentile, but it's Gentili. And then when
His name may have been pronounced Gentili. I've just read it. I've never heard it.
Gentili has the best coffee. God, there's some things I miss about Montreal. The stabbings and the shootings, not so much. The best white pill is Oliver Anthony being #1 song on iTunes. That is from Deb and Dogs. That's I've reached out to him. I mean, not privately. I emailed him. I don't expect to get preferential responses. I just try, and if it happens, it happens. So, but Robert, that's what I wanted to say, Robert. We came highly recommended for a Patrick Bet David podcast. So everyone, if you're on Twitter, tweet at them, let them know. I said I would jog over there if my car doesn't work. The Shadow Knows, $5. After Janet Reno and Donna Shalala were done destroying the republic of our education system, they moved to Miami and destroyed University of Miami football and made it the U itself is a bastion of total corruption, more than it already was. Oh, made the university, yeah. Owen Jones, $10. When will Barnes get his part of the book he's supposed to write with Rich Barris? Barnes, you can dictate your part. LOL, there are ghostwriters on our board that can write it from your dictation. $5.
Yeah, perfectionism interferes with that.
Yeah, that's also, yeah, I couldn't trust people to do that. Slowpoke 159, $5. Robert Barnes, can you recruit one or more journalists as clients to file the First Amendment case on Trump's gagging, or do you have to wait for a client to come to you? Multiple clients will get more publicity and split the costs.
I have to wait.
Okay. The great irony
in America, all the states bar lawyers from soliciting clients.
Yeah, same thing in Quebec and the rest of Canada. The great irony of Kellogg's sexualizing children is that George Kellogg created cornflakes as an anti-masturbation cereal. That's why it's so boring. Arcalipi. We got Torgo the White. Barnes, can you cover the new forced reset trigger case with the National Association of Gun Rights in the Fifth Circuit that was recently filed? I don't know about that, Robert. Have you heard about that?
I have not. Or maybe I have and just don't recognize the name.
Can certain political donors sue Rick for false advertising? Rick, that's Ryan PD 911. Matt Hammond, Barnes, are there not constitutional issues with Obamacare, as the Supreme Court said it was a tax, but the law originated in the Senate?
Yeah, where it originated is not a problem, but in my view, it was not a tax. It was a direct mandate that was always unconstitutional.
Angel RD, $5 tip. I like my bumper sticker says, "Let's go Brandon" and education freedom for Oregon.com. I like it whenever I see a "Let's go Brandon" bumper sticker. I know that we have something in common with the car in front of me. Denise Ann 2, $5. Robert, is it true that the 16th Amendment is unconstitutional and was not ratified legally? I recently heard that, but couldn't confirm it.
Yeah, courts disagree, so that ends it legally. I get there's arguments about whether many amendments were actually met the ratification standard, but the Supreme Court has said otherwise, so that ship has sailed.
All right, California. This is from Nawie, Nawie, $5. California has its own version of Obamacare with the penalty still intact. Would this case have any impact on the state regulation?
Probably not.
$10 from Eric F. Great show tonight, guys. Fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji. L. Strable, $5. No, just no question, just appreciation. Thank you. Batavia 66. If a senator wanted to start an inquiry into a disaster, which branch of government law enforcement issues the subpoena to witnesses? I think maybe that has to do with Hawaii or Maui. If a senator wanted to start an inquiry into a disaster, which branch of government?
Each committee is basically given power, and so it's usually the committee chairman that decides what they subpoena.
All right, Furby Slayer is explaining why I was wrong on Trey Gowdy. That's a $1 tip, but thank you for the insight. Viva Trey was your typical GOP. Lots of talk, even hard talk. When they gave the criminals immunity first. Okay. Von Cobra, $5. SEC violations is going to be a really hard bridge to cross for DEI. It's been laundered into best practices for years. Consultants this is the truth. They say we're doing it to increase shareholder value, not to compromise it. Consultants inform best practices, and breach of fiduciary responsibility isn't going to work, sadly. I would bet on that prediction, but you can always hope. Intercity Press is lawyer who has filled many unsealed motions for his press coverage. That's Intercity Press. Yeah, we know him. We had him on, Fonzie. We got $5 from Not a Robot. You saw Brandon Herrera, a.k.a. the AKA guy, running for Congress in Texas against a conservative who bent the knee gleefully to Biden and the ATF after the Uvalde and the disgrace of their police force. Would be nice to have him invited for a sidebar. Let me just screen grab that. Though I'm worried he'll lose an eye when he gets to Congress. Doc, no, Viva Fry should reach out to Greenwald, no, and recommend Barnes to file the, okay, don't worry about that, people. I might do it myself. The number of citizens per congressional district, this is from Ithaca 37 Cato. The number of citizens per congressional district used to be the average of 33,000 in 1790. It's now 700,000. Wouldn't it be more democratic to be back down to the original numbers? Any realistic way to return to that? Robert, I don't even understand that question.
What is it? We used to have actually more representative members. So a House member represented far fewer people, which meant the ordinary person had more access to their member of the House. That as our population has dramatically expanded, the size of the House has not. So your individual congressman went from 50,000 people to 100,000 people to 200,000. And so they're increasingly disconnected from their community they represent. And the question is, can't we return what the Constitution suggests, which is to always keep that number closer?
Now, McKinley says, $10 tip, how much does a chimney cost? And I don't know if it's a joke, but in order to justify a chimney, you have to have a fireplace. I'll say $15,000. I have no idea. And then we got Edward Martin, $387, $5 tip. How did Viva meet Barnes? Oh, Edward Martin, welcome to the channel, because that's good. We have new people coming in. Check out the live stream. We had the original. I was in my kitchen, off my computer, no camera, no mic. Robert, I remember it clear as day. So go watch that one. And we got McKinley, $10 tip. It's free. It's on the house. Oh, okay. I'm an idiot. Ricardo Polito, $5 tip. Trey Gowdy was a nothing but nothing spineless talking head. Okay. We got SPW 22205, $5. Are there any updates on the parents that got charged in the Michigan school shooting case? Robert, do you know?
Still ongoing, as far as I know.
Webster 1994. Hello, Viva. I tried to buy a shirt, but could not get it shipped to Australia. The shipping details on the website only sent to Canada and the US. Let me screen grab this and see what I can do about that. Webster 1994. I'll try to get to you. We have our winner for the next locals interview. I forget what the name was. I'll have to find it later, but stay tuned. Often Warong Joe, $10. Great show. Okay, I think we got it, Robert. Oh, and we got one more here. Oh, geez. Joe F 532, $20 tip. A second good from Robert to help with the Black Pill show. Help me sleep a little better tonight.
Yep. I think there are a few earlier ones that we answered. As I haven't seen Sound of Freedom yet to that question. And then
okay, because you can't rip it.
Those two. And
I think I got all the way. If I didn't, I'll scroll up to the beginning because I might have missed the beginning ones. Here's
it was
Brandon.
just 3 or 4 at the beginning.
Okay, here's the link to Brandon Herrera's YouTube channel. He's also got an interesting video on his thoughts on JFK Bullet. Now, hold on. Let me go up to the top because some people say don't give the chats too early because then you get ignored. So I'll go all the way up. Is the special prosecutor selection in the Trump case legal? Cow 59. Rue Sport. Just watch Sound of Freedom for the 3rd time at our local theater. Have you seen it? Can you get it, Tim? Let's see if we can get there. That's Rue Sport. I don't want to rip it because I don't want to steal it. Although I think having bought tickets for 10 other people allows me to rip it, but we'll see. Rob Barnes, the judge in the Brooke Jackson case may have had an injured friend or a family member since the original opinion. That's until is empty. We got the Shadow Nose, $15. I believe it's the FBI venting their fury like what happened with Elian Gonzalez. Half the brutality of his abduction and repatriation was Janet Reno and the FBI attempt to retaliate against the American people for the backlash against Waco and Ruby Ridge. The FBI has always possessed the emotional maturity of OnlyFans divas, so slaughtering septuagenarian cripples to make themselves feel better is par for the course. I'd love to see a sidebar conversation between Barnes and Norman. Okay, then we got to the rest. Okay, we're good. Robert. Andy, no.
Now, I didn't see your interview with a post-millennial reporter. Is all that crazy stuff about what the defense lawyer said, did that actually happen?
Yeah. First of all, okay, I love Libby Emmons. I love her because she reminds me of the actress who, not from The Bridesmaid's Tale, or The Bridesmaid's Tale. Is that what it's called, The Bridesmaid's Tale? The show?
That sounds familiar.
No,
Handmaid's Tale.
The Handmaid's Tale. So Bryce, no, she reminds me of the actress. It was the same actress from Get Him to the Greek with Russell Brand. No, I interviewed her. It's true, Robert. This lawyer gets up and says, I am Antifa. I'm going to make a shirt that says I'm Antifa. I'm going to wear it afterwards. I'm going to remember all of your faces. They had Antifa members in the courthouse, allegedly staring down people, staring down Andy No, causing a ruckus. The jury members were apparently, threatening being doxxed, whatever. The journalist, Katie Davidson, I think is her name, had her car broken into at her hotel, had her ID information stolen. It sounds like a certifiable shit show that is now a trial in America, and he gets acquitted. They get not found, not liable because it's a civil case. And Andy No, I could understand.
And again, even though one of the defendants admitted on the stand he did assault him and did dox him for the purposes of another assault.
That's the thing. I think he admitted having doxed him for the purposes of the assault at issue, and then admitted to having assaulted.
Included in the suit, the 2019, the prior assault.
I don't
think. And he admitted he did it. He now felt bad and it was the wrong thing, and the jury still let him walk. So the guy says, "Yeah, I did it." Oh, but you're Antifa, and it's Portland, Oregon. You can commit any crime you want.
Oh, the fucking mob owns the city, Robert. Like they own it. No one will ever get a fair trial, depending on what side of the aisle you're on. The hacker guy, as far as I understood, he admitted to the assault in the gym. I'm not sure if that was part of the suit, but setting that aside, he basically admitted to having lied in his defense in the criminal suit. And then the other nutcases basically issue overt threats in real time, some of them on social media. The lawyer, I'm retired. I'm going to remember your faces. I'm going to get a shirt that says I'm Antifa. Go ahead and render your decision there, jury. No pressure. It's a joke of a trial. I just hope that Andy No can heal and can move on. I don't know, Robert. I don't know how people move on from that type of trauma and this type of double infliction of emotional distress, but it is what it is to actually, quote Nate Brody. It is what it is. It's shit corruption through and through. And they're going to live with the hell that they have ushered in Oregon or Portland or wherever the hell that is. What were the other cases, Robert?
Missouri versus Biden.
Oh yeah. Okay. So that's where I was hearing the snippets of the audios from the arguments from the judge to the lawyers. Biden's lawyers didn't sound like they had any good responses to the bullshit that they're pushing to the judges, and they're not buying it by the looks of it. Give us a better summary and tell us what you think.
Yeah, so more than 2 hours of oral argument. And given the profile the judges assigned the case, and given the questions they asked at oral argument, it strongly appears that they are going to rule in the same way the district court did, which is to say the Biden administration is violating people's First Amendment rights through a combination of collusion and coercion of major social media companies, and affirm the injunction that was issued. Now, they may do an administrative stay to let them try to take it up to the U.S. Supreme Court. But by what happened, it looks like that's going to be a huge win in the Fifth Circuit and hopefully clarify some areas of law that the government thought, as long as they didn't explicitly say in the same message, censor or this, or this. And I think the court's going to clarify when it's obvious, when it's there by implication, when it's there by other statements, that's sufficient for collusion, that's sufficient for coercion, and you don't need both, you just need either. And this will be a huge First Amendment win, it looks like we're heading to in the Fifth Circuit.
I mean, from your mouth to God's ears, Robert, it's about bloody time it has to happen. Because I think, like, it's only if the government holds a gun to your head that it's collusion, coercion, incitement. What's the word? Bribery. It's preposterous, but we'll see where, and maybe that'll actually have an impact on some of the other social media lawsuits. Robert, Don's wife. Whenever I see that, I think of my mother-in-law, Val, who's my father-in-law was named Don. Don's wife sent a $5 tip and says, I want the blue Barnes Abraham Lincoln shirt that you often wear, but I don't see the color available when I order it. Are they all the same color? If so, what color? I'll fix that if it's not there, because that shirt that you wear is from the Represent, but now we're using getpressed.ca. So I'll make sure they have the same color, but I'll take care of that. Ricardo Pelota, $5 tip, says, great Finnish film worth escaping into. Sisu 2022.
Oh, yeah, Sisu. Yeah, Sisu's great. It's this old guy that just keeps killing everybody.
Great. So it's like
He kills a bunch of Nazis.
can't go wrong with that, I guess. Special red $5. Viva, please go over the levels of persecution that the government will bring on a person they don't like. Now ask where Donald J. Trump is at, where the persecution is logically going next. Robert.
I mean, they've done everything except literally kill him.
Well, and that's where I don't want to go, Special Red, because
they think they're going to lock him up in that, and they think a conviction by itself will get voters to abandon him, and that's a mistake. But hopefully, they won't realize that's a mistake until Election Day.
And then NP _ Pitbull Mama. So that let me see if I can get that. NP would be North. I can't think of the NP. Pitbull Mama says, given the widespread voter fraud, is there any way Trump can win? Robert,
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this. Like in 2020, it was changing rules and regulation. It
Right.
was abusing
And
COVID.
they still had to they did a massive voter fraud. Joe Biden said, biggest voter fraud organization ever. Remember when he bragged about that, let that out?
Oh, yeah.
And they still barely snuck by. So right now they're going to lose so badly, it's not going to matter. So, and I think that's where things are heading.
And I just it seems that they've changed tack a little bit. They're not going for the voter stuff now. Now they're just going to prevent Trump from campaigning so that he can't actually do anything between now and 2024. And Joe Biden can run out of his basement like he did in 2020 and still win.
Oh, that's the goal. Now, speaking of fighting back, briefly on the 10-penny case that people asked us about in Ohio.
I know nothing about this case, Robert.
So this is another COVID case where they're targeting doctors for dissonant opinions. She had not participated in the initial investigative stage, according to the Ohio. So they temporarily suspended her medical license, but said they would restore it as long as she participated in the investigation stage. So that hasn't yet reached full stage development. Now in Washington, a bunch of doctors sued, and here's where they were smart. They sued in the state court under the Washington's version of the Administrative Procedures Act, Washington's version of the Free Speech Clause. A lot of states interpret their free speech clause broader than the federal courts do. Washington is one of those states. And procedurally, they brought the case in a rural district in southeastern Washington, probably not far from where I guess Allison Morrow used to live. I think she's moved to Florida, if I understand right. I think she's in the process of moving. Maybe already moved. That's the impression I got. I wasn't sure, but I thought they were going to move to Idaho, but then I think she moved to Florida or something. I think they just gave up on the West altogether. I'm not sure about that, but that was my loose impression. But that part of Washington, it's like, the two counties are like Trump plus 20 counties, and they didn't bring any federal issues, so they're avoiding federal court because federal court's been bad on all these COVID issues. But what's happened in the state of Washington, here's what they did: the Washington Medical Commission announced a policy statement during COVID, saying that we're going to call all of these things the standard of care, that if you as a doctor talk bad about the FDA or disagree with the FDA about ivermectin or vaccines or masks, we're going to come and take away your medical license. So these doctors are suing because right now Washington is trying to take away a bunch of doctors' licenses, primarily for prescribing ivermectin. I was curious that's the primary thing. For a few of them, they're mad about them questioning masks or questioning the efficacy of the vaccine. But for the bulk of it, it's that they prescribed ivermectin. And they're doing this when the FDA just finally fessed up this week that, yeah, you can prescribe ivermectin for this. So it's like it's a completely bogus state of Washington action. But they sued because they said, well, first of all, the Washington Medical Commission passed this rule that they're enforcing without even going through any of the rulemaking process they're required to under Washington's version of the Administrative Procedures Act. So it's all null and void. And secondly, it violates Washington's free speech clause because it attempts to be prior restraint and post-action punishment for people's speech about COVID by its own terms. So it's a very good case. I hope we will see more of these cases challenging these dangerous licensing boards. And it should be a reminder to everybody out there, we should have a lot fewer The real solution, get rid of licensing boards. Fraud in advertising is sufficient. Let somebody tell you, okay, I got law degree from so-and-so and such a state bar, such and such state court says I'm wonderful, or such and so doctor certification group says I'm great. But that should be the limit of it. Now, the practical problem for doctors is the certification boards are even worse because most of them are private, not state run. But most hospitals will not employ you unless you have those certifications. Many insurance companies will not reimburse you if you don't have those certifications. So that's where doctors, if people wondered why doctors kept their mouths shut, it's because you get, just like the Utah doctor is facing federal criminal prosecution when his patients asked him to not give them the COVID vaccine, and he went along with his patient's request because he thought it was the healthiest thing for him. The Biden administration is trying to lock him up. The reason everybody stayed quiet is because there was no incentive to open your mouth and every incentive to play ball. And the big key to this is the misuse and abuse of licensures and certifications and all this jazz.
And there was some actual financial incentives for the doctors to prescribe.
Oh, yeah, paying them money. In the hospitals, they paid him more when they whacked the guy, whacked some of the old people. And so the foundation supporting the efforts here, kind of like the America First Legal Foundation, this one is called the Silent Majority Foundation. So shout out to them for the good work they're doing in this Washington case.
Fantastic. Serena Reppin says the new t-shirt company only has larger sizes, not XS women's. I'll fix that. Cougar 1985. Are you still holding to the belief that Michelle Obama is not running for president?
Oh,
Robert?
yeah. Zero chance.
Okay. $5.
She's busy drowning people that see her banging guys.
So many theories. I was just thinking about it today. Has anybody any news on that? No, just somebody died on the president's house.
That case has just kind of disappeared.
Forget
The mainstream media's not talking about it at all.
No, somebody dies on the president's property.
And first the president's not there, then he is there, then maybe he's there, then maybe it was 2 feet deep, maybe it was 8 feet deep, maybe it was 12 feet deep, maybe somebody was with him, maybe somebody wasn't with him, maybe somebody witnessed it, maybe somebody didn't, maybe the chef was writing a book, maybe he wasn't.
I'm just going to send out a tweet in a second. I got to remember that. And then there was one more here. Hold on 1 second. There might have been 2 more.
Oh, I did see the raid on the Marion, Kansas newspaper, but it came up late, so we'll cover it next week. I got to take a deeper dive into that.
And that's
this reporter
Julio.
exposed this corrupt local official or prominent individual for like DUIs and other issues, and then they like raided maybe even killed a reporter or something. It was like a crazy story.
I haven't heard anything about that. That was from Julie_O. And then we got, I think this is the last one. Serena Reppins. Please get the t-shirts made for women in XS sizes. The small sizes feel like baggy dress. Allison Morrow and her family are already down here in Florida. Well, I can't say what I
That's
already know.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, they're not far. I was going to hit them up I was going to stay over there for one night on the way up or down. It's like showing up with a kid in 2.
Are they up near northern Florida or near you are in South Florida?
I don't know. Well, they're not close. I don't know. Not to divulge.
Yeah, I figured they're out in the country someplace. Are
They're
they
not,
out like in the Glades? Or they
we're close to the Glades. They're not close, but Florida, like just to get out of the state.
Are they up near the Redneck Riviera?
I don't know what the Redneck Riviera is.
That's the northern part of the state. It's like Panama City, and they used to call it the Redneck Riviera because I mean these days it's not as redneckish as it once was, but it used to be the Redneck Riviera. So it was, very working class, old school, deep South. There's a county up there called Dixie County. I almost bought a house up there years ago because I just love the little name Dixie County. Old blue collar, populist county going way back.
Okay, hold on 1 second. But all that says, I was going to hit them up on the way up or down, and then I was like, showing up with a kid and 2 special needs dogs who shit and piss all over the place is probably not the best thing to do.
They're used to that stuff. They always have like horses.
I
and
know,
and
but
even running around. And
even still, it's
those outdoors types. You just got to make sure not to tick him off because Lynn's up there with his sniper gun. So you got to be ready.
You folks should reduce your arguments to simple talking points so us simple minds can repeat them in a pinch. That's from McKinley.
Well, Trump is great. Like election interference. No reason to plea. I'm not guilty. Election interference. He's good at that.
Hey, Barnes, can you squeeze that John Grisham to write a sequel to Rainmaker based on the real life events of the last 4 years? Might have to speak slower because he's from Mississippi.
True.
And now I've been infiltrated. Check this out. The Obama's gay letter made it to the Drudge Report. Oh, really?
That's been he's bat. Oh well, the little guy. He can't hear both ways. So that just means left-handed and right-handed, Ethan.
Just so you know, just so everybody knows, he can't hear what I can hear right now. But I'm gonna take.
All right. Oh yeah, now he's curious. Hey, that was a good fish he caught.
Oh, dude, that was okay. Hold on. Now I'll take the earplugs out. So earmuffs. Okay. Boom. Oh, hold on 1 second. Get this out of here. Let me get the window. Oh, okay, Robert, can you still hear us?
Oh, yeah. Good.
Oh,
That
now we
was a
can
good
hear.
fish you caught there, Ethan.
How did it taste?
Did it taste good?
And by the way, we've been in Florida for what, a year? He's already joined the Bloods. Like, he's wearing gang colors and like top and bottom. I don't even know where he got red. Where'd you get red shorts from?
Hendrix gave
That looks
them
like
to me a
soccer
long time
shorts.
ago.
Okay, get out. No, he wants to maybe show the fake ID that I got with my bad mother effer wallet. It's Jules Winifred from Pulp Fiction. Okay, get out of here. I'm out in 2
That's right.
seconds. Okay, everybody, that's going to be the end of it. Okay, I'm going to be out in 1 minute. Get out of here. Kid thinks he's smart. He can count to 1 second. Robert, stick around. We'll say our proper goodbyes. Let me make sure that everyone in locals is taken care of. Locals, thank you. So we got Wednesday night as sidebar. I'll be live
Heather
all week.
McDonald.
And who do you have? What other appearances do you have this week?
None, because I got a bunch of legal stuff.
Oh, yes, the actual practice of law. Ugh, shudder. All right, everybody. Oh, there's poo in the dog's bed. Damn it. All right, everyone on locals, good night. See you this week. Robert, stick around. We'll say our proper goodbyes. Peace out, everybody.